Turn it up. Let's go.
This is The Rich Eisen Show, live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
I've said it before, I've said it again. Baseball cannot throw its hands up and say, we're not playing because we couldn't figure out the money.
The Rich Eisen Show. Today's guests: MLB Network reporter Tom Verducci, senior NBA writer for The Athletic, David Aldridge, Fox Sports rules analyst Mike Pereira, plus from TNT's Snowpiercer, actor Mike O'Malley. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Well, hey, one and all, Rich Eisen here in the Los Angeles studios of the Rich Eisen Show here on a Friday, and we're here once again, hopefully for you to take some time out of the real world, and join us. And we're here. I'll be honest with you, Chris Brockman, you're across the way. Mike Del Tufo, you're across the way. Yeah. I know I say I'll be honest with you as if I lie when I don't give you that caveat to begin with. Look, it's difficult to come in here and just, turn the page with everything that I saw last night, everything that this country is going through right now. And we've been here best we can every single day for you on youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show, Sirius XM, and we'll be on NBCSN coming up at 1 Eastern time. We're here best we can, as thank God we're all healthy, and we're doing what we need to do to stay healthy best we can. So we've been here for you in a pandemic, and the world does seem that's coming apart at the seams. And I just wanted to acknowledge that off the top. And we're going to go down a sports wormhole here. I know, again, Jim Harbaugh was on yesterday, and even he, when I was just trying to be playful with him and talking to him about college football and him doing cartwheels and stuff, he said that everything that was going on in the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, was on his mind, and he called it horrendous what happened on the streets of Minneapolis. He is not wrong. And we're all scratching our heads and genuinely concerned and nervous and worried and wondering and all of that. And I feel it too. I just wanted to come off the top and acknowledge that and say that we're here for you over the next 3 hours. Might say something at the top of hour 2 as well. Just throwing that out there, and send my best to everybody out there seeking justice and seeking peace. 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. We've got a lot of time here on this show to take your phone calls today. Sometimes we're jammed with 5-6 guests. We've got 4 today. 844-204-RICH. First up is Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated, Fox Sports. He's quite the hyphenate, also MLB Network. Just wanted to get his cool-headed thoughts on what's going on with baseball. Sure seems particularly difficult to see a season going down in short order there. David Aldridge of The Athletic will join us. And, we haven't had him on since he was all over The Last Dance and the 10-part documentary.
Yeah, he was everywhere.
Because he had a front row seat covering all of that for the Washington Post, also for ESPN. My longtime colleague there will be joining us as we're looking over the steering wheel all the time now to see when the NBA is going to come up with what the NHL's come up with, and what I would love for Major League Baseball to come up with, what the Premier League's come up with, what appears La Liga has come up with in Spain now, which is a schedule. This is what we're looking for the return of action to the NBA. How many teams are going to be involved? Where, when, all of that, although we didn't get the where and when from the NHL. So David's going to give us his 2 cents on that. Mike Pereira, our buddy from Fox Sports, back in the day, I had always a lot of great conversations with him when he was the head of NFL refs. The rules changes that were passed in the NFL, that were rejected in the NFL, that were tabled in the NFL, that were withdrawn before a vote even took place in the NFL's virtual owners meeting, as they referred to it yesterday. He will make heads or tails of all of that. The concept of manipulating the game clock that we saw the Belichick employ against the Jets and then have employed against him by Mike Vrabel in the playoffs. That's now gone. There's now a defensive player protection for those returning kicks and, most importantly, punts. Automatic replay reviews to include scoring plays and turnovers negated by foul. That has now been made permanent. What wasn't any chance on this green earth of being made permanent yesterday was pass interference being around forever as a reviewable play. That's now a one and done. We will never forget. Remember that time where the refs blew it in New Orleans and then they made it a penalty? I mean, they made it a reviewable
and it just couldn't
play.
get it right.
Couldn't get it right.
Gosh, what a disaster.
Couldn't get it right. And the whole idea of let's get a sky judge in there now wasn't even up for a vote because that got withdrawn. And then what about the idea of that 4th and 15 play? We'll get to that a little bit. Mike O'Malley's going to join us. I mean, this guy has got quite the career. He is a well-sought-after writer and showrunner in this town. He's worked with LeBron James on the television project. He's also in the new TNT show that we had Daveed Diggs on the other day. There's Daveed on the right. Jennifer Connelly, who is delightful. What a human being on the planet.
Indeed.
And Mike O'Malley there in the back. Sports fans may remember him as the Boston Bruins sweater-wearing Rick for ESPN. I think it was ESPN.com, the very first commercials for ESPN.com, I think.
Way back.
If I'm not mistaken. Will you look that up?
When the Rick commercials were?
But the Rick wasn't for SportsCenter.
No.
And I don't think the Rick was for ESPN, the magazine. I literally think
Page 2 or something?
I literally think this is how long it's been. It was for the launch of ESPN's first ever website, which was on the Go.com network, because I was around when that happened. It was ESPN.go.com was the original website.
Yeah, I know. Well, at first it was ESPN Sports Zone.
Oh, my
was the first one back in like late 90s.
Del Tufo, you remember you used to call Sports Phone for your sports scores?
Oh, Sports Phone was amazing.
I remember the commercial from New York.
How much did it he definitely
my
paid.
parents would be like, what are these 50-cent charges on our bill?
Thank you for calling Sports
cents?
Phone.
976-1313.
Oh, you remember
for
the
all
number.
your sports news instantly.
And the guy would be like, thank you for calling Sports Phone.
That's right.
Tonight's scores, the Devils against the Islanders.
Dude.
That's exactly what it's...
That's true.
Yeah.
Final score, Mets 5, Phillies 3. And you'd be just like, oh damn it. Like you had no idea.
You had no idea.
You wouldn't get any sort of
My
statistics
brother
about who
Frank
had home runs?
got in trouble so many times.
Calling Sports Phone.
And that would come on the bill.
Now here we are on YouTube.
I mean, seconds. Phone.
Giving you sports.
Alert,
oh,
YouTube.
my God.
Look,
amazing.
and this one commercial I found doesn't have any graphics on it. So hold on.
Oh, they have a commercial?
It was, the commercial for the Rick.
The Rick. I was just
Where he
say,
played a
for
Boston
Sports
sports fan sitting in his room wearing a Boston Bruins sweater.
Here we go, 1999.
Laugh out loud funny commercials. I remember that was 3 years into SportsCenter for me.
Phone. I remember that one.
Yeah, he was like, hey, what's up? My name's Rick.
Yeah,
Everyone
the
calls
Rick.
me The Rick.
The Rick.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that one. We were watching the commercials this morning, ESPN.
Another interesting aspect of Mike O'Malley is he is an emeritus, I believe, president of a pony baseball league here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, ESPN.com, these ads were for.
Dude, think about that. The first ever
1999.
website.
I mean,
20 years, 21 years.
Wow.
So good.
So that's what's on our show today. That's what we got going on today. And in terms of normalcy, we're just looking for flashes of normalcy in sports. So La Liga says they're coming back on June 8th, which is great news. Certainly because it's taking place in one of the worst hot spots that Europe had. Obviously, there's Italy, in Spain. So if the folks in Spain are like, let's get back, with no fans, let's go. That's good news. So you're going to have the Premier League and you're going to have La Liga, and the French already said they're done, but not too shabby. I'm glad to see that. And how about this? We could talk to David. Do we talk to David Aldridge about this? Do we actually spend real estate with a guy who we could go down a wormhole on The Last Dance one last dance
Yeah, let's do it.
with him, but also, the latest on what is going on in the NBA, and that's coming up in about an hour from now. A good old-fashioned trade rumor. Did you see this?
Is it Bradley Beal?
Yes, the New York Daily News is saying the Brooklyn Nets, they said this last week, had internal discussions for him. He has now, for the first time, talked about it. And can you make a trade in a pandemic when you don't even know, what year, what league year? I guess the new league year hasn't started yet, and there's no...
Yeah, right.
Do
I don't know
if they
how
don't
that
come
would
back,
work.
if they don't come back, do contracts toll? I think they do. I think they do count. Like the whole full year would count. By the way, that's one thing that nobody's talking about just yet. Like, what if baseball does throw its hands up and say, "Sorry, everybody. I know you're gonna, sort of like when one of my kids says, "I know you're gonna be mad at me."
You're like, oh, great.
I know you're going to be mad at me. I don't want to say it because I know you're going to be mad at me. Like baseball would just come to the sports group writ large and just say, I know you're going to be pissed at me. But we're just not going to do it. Yeah.
2020's
just can't do it.
Yeah, it's over.
Can't do it, But, and by the way, if they do throw their hands up and say that, it won't be before they tar and feather each side as greedy and the ones who blew it up. And they're, it won't be a collective owning of the arms being thrown up. But what if that happens? What if the virus does come back in some, I know this is not the escape you're looking for, but what if it does actually wipe out a playing season? What if these sports leagues do come back and have to stop again, essentially? What happens to like a draft order? I know baseball's draft, just they announced they're having a 2020 draft coming up this next month. What happens then, man? That's why I think a lot of these leagues are going for it or going to have to go for it. Okay, and then now also speaking of going for it. So the 4th and 15 rule in the NFL. Let's hit on this a little bit here. I loved the idea. I absolutely loved the idea of the onside kick is not what it used to be anymore. It's now 1 out of every 10 chances make it. The concept of using the onside kick in a manner that we grew up with it and seeing it being successful, that's gone. That's history. Now that the player safety rules have been put in place for kicking off and how many people need to be on certain sides of the ball, and you can't run up to the line of scrimmage. You've really got to get a flat-footed start to go get a ball that as soon as it's kicked is up in the air, already 15 feet away from the human being that's starting from a flat-footed stance. And whoever's standing there waiting the arms, the ball's closer to whoever it's usually waiting, whoever you're trying to avoid getting possession of. It stinks. It's like the penny. You just leave it there for others. You don't need it. You don't use it. It's useless. So let's come up with this idea that we saw in the AAF of let's go for it on 4th and 15. Problem is the ability to make that is much greater than the 10%. I think it's somewhere between 20 and 30%. And then you give in the fact that any defensive penalty would automatically give a first down to the team that's attempting it. And then you throw in the fact that the defense that's out there on the field, it would make sense, has just been out there on the field for several minutes at a time because they just got scored on. Sure, there can be a short field or there could be a quick strike 80-yarder or something like that. But invariably, the defense has just been scored on after exerting a lot of energy. Now they're out there on the field against, say, an offense on a roll like the Chiefs. And you put all that together, and I think teams in the NFL, well, there's also one thing also working against it too. Just the old guard saying, I don't like it.
Right. Like Zimmer yesterday.
I don't like it. I'm a traditionalist. So it looks like we're going back to the old drawing board, not on 4th and 15, but on the onside kick. Let's tinker with that a little bit to get the odds up from 10%. And to that, I say I don't like it. I'd rather tinker with the 4th and 15 concept. I'd rather make it 4th and 17, move it back, 4th and 18.
Right.
You move it a couple yards, then you mess with the percentage in a way that makes it tougher. And a defensive penalty doesn't automatically give the team a fresh set of downs. What it would do would give them one more shot at it, but with the yardage being applied. Now, the unintended consequence there, let's just game this out, Chris, just for conversation's sake here on a Friday.
Let's do it.
Would you purposefully, if you're beaten, just yank somebody down knowing that you don't still give full possession of the ball back? But what if it's a spot foul? What if you throw it 35 yards down the field and it's just a full-on pass interference? Do you go college football, it's 15 yards, and you try again? Do you go, like, if it's pass interference, then it's now actually a 4th and 5 attempt? It's 10 yards. Now it's just now the odds are even greater. Do you know why they changed it from a timed down to an untimed down?
So a team with the lead doesn't just do this and run off the last few seconds of the game?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Use it as an opportunity to just do, hey, here's what you do.
Right.
Get the ball,
and run
around, and then run out of the end zone, and we'll win by 1 as opposed to 3, and the only people who are pissed who have had the team to win by 2.5. You know? So everybody's always gaming out what's the unintended consequence, or WWBD, what would Belichick do? Because he'll always find whatever the loophole is and drive a Patriot Mack truck through it.
And then the rule gets changed 2 years later.
Like it just did now.
Yeah.
About using pre-snap penalties in your favor to run a clock down.
Yeah, I like the idea of you can't get a first down from it, but if there is a defensive penalty, you still have to try the 4th down again. You need to complete the play.
I understand.
You can't get bailed out from defensive holding on the other side of the field.
But what if it is a full-on, I'm going to take my huge game-changing wide receiver, throw it a 50-50 ball
like Julio
in the direction,
Jones.
right. Throw it in that direction because I've got a matchup that I know I can exploit. That guy pulls on Julio Jones, and I got myself a first down, and it's a total blatant pass interference, and it is a rightful call. That's pass interference, and it's 40 yards down the field. Do you give him one more shot now from that 40? Is it a spot foul, but you still have to make another first down to get it?
Yeah, you can't be bailed out. You get the ball way down there because the defense did commit a penalty.
Is it 4th and 15
but it's
again?
4th and 15 again. You got to complete the play.
Unless you're close enough to kick a field goal by that point, and you're only down by 2.
Can't kick a field goal.
So then the unintended consequences, defense could do whatever the hell they want to somebody, and then that's the end of that.
But it's an untimed down, so they're still going to have a play to run. Eventually, you have to play defense and either stop them or they get the right yardage, or if they're going down the field like that kind of penalties, get in the end zone.
I would love to figure it out because I'm so sick and tired of the onside kick.
Yeah, it's
I'm
stupid.
over the onside kick. The onside kick is so rare that it works because the kicker kicked it in a manner that the ball popped up and somebody made a great athletic play on the hands team to recover it. Invariably, it's just some guy, the ball finds some guy, and that person becomes the absolute GOAT because it hit them in the shin, or it's just some sort of weird-ass play. I'd rather
Who was that
see,
dude on the Packers who was the GOAT that year?
I'd rather see a competitive 4th down play and an offensive play. I'd rather see that. The other coaches and the general managers and the owners apparently did not, and they tabled it. meaning that if there's another owners meeting that, by the way, is not yet scheduled, it could be brought up. So it ain't happening for this year. But Mike Pereira will join us. Joining us now here on the Rich Eisen Show. I love chatting with this man. I love chatting baseball with this guy, and I hope I do get to chat actual baseball games and strategy and what's going on in a 2020 playing season with him. He is from Sports Illustrated and Fox Sports and MLB Network, the ultimate hyphenate. Tom Verducci back here on the show. How are you, Tom?
I am well. Rich, how are you?
I am doing well. Where do things stand right now with Major League Baseball, best you can tell, for this season?
There's a soft deadline coming up. In order to have an 82-game season that starts around 4th of July weekend, they need to get players in camp by about June 13th. So, I figure about June 9th or 10th. That's when they have to come to an agreement to make that possible. It's not a really hard deadline, Rich. You could always have, say, a 60-game season instead of an 82-game one, but this is what we have in front of us right now. And right now, both sides are really dug in. And if you just go by the temperature of negotiations right now, you would say that an agreement is not likely. But if you step back from it and you think about what is the cost of no agreement and no baseball in 2020, I think that makes you optimistic, or at least me, that these two sides will come to the realization that they need one another. If it's a battle of wills, there'll be no baseball because he is dug in. But if it's a battle of intellect and compromise and negotiation and an understanding of how important not just this year is, but the next couple of years, then yes, there will be one.
What, best you can tell, was the owner's offer, if you will? And because, the concept is, again, if I'm not wrong, before you get to it, that the owners think the players think what was negotiated in March is what is applicable now, and owners say that there's now been a change in reality from March, and we got to talk about something else here, and players think that what is being offered is a second pay cut that also could mimic a salary cap. Is that an accurate assessment of what's going on? Am I missing?
Yeah, that's a good job. I mean, that agreement in March that was put in place, the players are essentially saying no backsies. That's
Nice.
it. We negotiated an agreement, and we're going to get paid based on how many games are played on a prorated basis of our annual 2020 salaries. The owners are saying, wait a second, we actually have a provision in that agreement that says we will continue to discuss the economics if we have to play in empty ballparks. And obviously now it looks like that could be probably an entire season with no fans. So the economic realities, according to the owners, have changed since March, and the players are saying, no, it hasn't. We have our agreement. That's that. So that's kind of a sticking point here. The players, and you saw the quote from Max Scherzer Wednesday night saying, we're not taking a second pay cut. But obviously the owners are saying things are a lot different. Now, you mentioned a salary cap. That was not a formal proposal to the players. That was floated the idea that, hey, revenues are so far down, we'll gladly share with the players 50% of our revenues. Well, listen, 21 of the 30 teams weren't around in 1994 when we lost the World Series because the owners tried to get a salary cap. They should still know there's no way that flies. That's a complete non-starter with the union. That was a waste of time. It probably ticked off some people unnecessarily. So now their idea is we will use a sliding pay scale in terms of the cuts that we're going to ask players to take. Now, I know the players look at that as, hey, you're trying to drive a wedge between the high revenue, high income guys who are going to take the largest percentage cut against the so-called, most players, 2/3 of players make $1 million or less, the rank and file. So I don't think that was the purpose here. It was to divide the players. I think what MLB is doing is what they're doing on a club basis, what many businesses are doing, and they're asking the highest salaried employees to take a larger percentage of a cut during a pandemic. It wasn't like they came up with this idea themselves. It's happening across Wall Street. It's happening across Main Street. But the players did not take kindly to that. So the players now, the ball's in their court. They got this proposal about a sliding pay scale. They've made their feelings known that they hate it. They don't like it. So they have to come back with something. And their idea is to come back with saying, hey, how about we play more games? And the owner's position on this, I believe, is, wait a second. These games still won't have fans in the stands. So 100 games times 0 ballpark revenue is exactly the same sum as 82 games times 0. And the other thing that's really key here, Rich, is that the players want to play more games and push the World Series to, say, November. I think that's a non-starter for the owners because everybody, and not just baseball, but in general, people are worried about a second wave of the virus, right? Once we hit the flu season, they want to get the World Series done by the end of October. So pushing it to November is really risky in the owner's opinion because, believe it or not, they get almost 60% of their national TV revenue just in the postseason. This year, that's essentially a $1 billion pot that's out there if the postseason is played to completion. So they don't want to risk that. So I think the idea of playing more games, extending the season, is not that's not going to solve this, I don't think.
Well, and then there's, when they come up with a proposal that says the higher paid guys will take the cuts and the lower paid guys won't, how do they not think that won't be viewed by the union as something that puts the pressure on the highest paid guys to do something to make sure the lower paid guys don't look at them adversely? How could that possibly be forwarded without the knowledge of how it would be taken and received? I get it.
I totally get it. The response was almost predictable, but again, this is what teams are doing on a club basis. The same week the Nationals did that, the Dodgers did that, asking employees to take pay cuts based on a sliding pay scale.
So then my question for you is,
what's happening here is the players now have found a unified voice. Listen, we know that they didn't really do well in the last CBA, right? At least economically. They did well with some quality of life issues in terms of off days and the scheduling, things like that. Economically, they didn't do well. I thought during the whole Houston Astros sign stealing scandal, and that seems like ages ago, doesn't it? that kind of splintered the union, right? There were some players who were calling out other players. That doesn't happen too often. But now I think they have found a common voice, and it's essentially on being asked to take what they see as a second pay cut.
Oh, man. Okay. Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated, Fox Sports, and MLB Network. Sports Illustrated, I think I said that too. I can't keep up with you. So so when it comes down to it, what's with the Scott Boras stuff now? What Trevor Bauer threw out there. What was he was obviously referring to, I guess, the email that the Associated Press obtained. Basically Boras saying the owners aren't talking about losing money in a playing season. They're talking about not having the money to pay off the debt that Major League Baseball allowed them to use to jack up the price of their team or the valuation of their team. And your salaries would be viewed as a bailout. This is what the math that he said. What about that, Tom?
Yeah, well, first of all, Scott has and should have tremendous influence in this game based on his track record, how long he's been in the game, the clientele that he has. I mean, the dude signed, $1 billion worth of contracts this past offseason. He clearly has the ear of Tony Clark. He has 3 players who are on the union's executive board. No other agent has more than 1. So he does have an outside influence as far as an agent in the union's matters go. So I don't see that necessarily as a negative thing. And again, I think he's been the one sort of rallying players. He came out with his email. I didn't see much from Tony Clark, but you heard Scott Boras loud and clear. Now, as you said, he's saying the owner's problem is, listen, these people took out loans to renovate their stadiums, to build ballpark villages, and even to purchase teams, and that's their mistake. Well, that's not entirely true. Their mistake, if there is a mistake, is what every business is finding now. It's called a global pandemic. Everybody, if you ran a restaurant and you took out a loan to renovate your restaurant, are you going to blame the pandemic because your business is down? This is really unprecedented times, emotionally and especially economically. And I think what he needs to do, Scott, and all of the union in general, is where is the common ground? Basically, I think players and owners need to invest in one another for the good of the sport going forward. Not to say who's right or who's wrong in May of 2020, but what does this sport look like, Rich, if there's no baseball this year? If you as a fan are watching, say, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, tennis, golf, you name it, baseball from Japan, Korea, soccer across the world, And there's no baseball because baseball players and owners could not agree on economics, not safety protocols, economics, splitting up the money during a pandemic. What do you think that does for the game going forward? What does it do for free agency this offseason? What does it do for next year in terms of negotiating towards a new CBA, which expires at the end of next year? What does it do for clubs who are trying to sell sponsorship and advertising after essentially 17 to 19 months of baseball going dark and people being out of the habit of following baseball? I mean, that is a bleak landscape if you're talking about baseball being the only sport that is not out there, or at least trying to find a way to put their sport out in front of the public. And again, I'm going to use my restaurant analogy again. If your favorite restaurant closes for a year-long renovation, guess what? You get into the habit of finding another restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a scary thing for restaurants to be down for that long. And if baseball does not give people the option of following the game for a year and a half, I'm afraid a lot of people will have moved on.
See, and I'll ask you the same question I asked our colleague at ESPN, Jeff Passan, when he was on yesterday. It sure feels like this is a CBA negotiation, that because one is coming up next year, that there's a lot of territory being staked out for the motherlode conversation next year that appears to now be front-loaded now at the worst possible time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, Rich, and I think, I don't know if this is possible. I mean, I hate to even propose ideas that would, quote-unquote, help solve a very complex labor dispute.
Yes.
But, go back to 1981 when he had that 2-month player strike, and part of the settlement was that they agreed to extend the CBA by a year, essentially for the same reason you just brought up, because things are so toxic right now, it's going to be hard to get to a new, huge overall agreement. So just kind of put it off for another year. So I agree that you can't think about these negotiations without thinking about the next CBA being right around the corner.
So here's a little solve I've got to start, Tom, because, again,
Good.
There may be an I in Rich and Eisen. There's an I in Verducci, but we're team players. We're trying to figure this thing out. Doesn't baseball have already agreed with the players and vice versa on a schedule where it would be or at least what it would look like that they could forward so we could all discuss that while they're doing this under that cover in the same way I'm assuming the NHL is doing with its players right now, potentially, that they've come up with, here's what it will look like when we return, wherever that may be, whenever that may be. But we're talking about that and saying, hey, hockey's trying. They might be having similar conversations with their players now about safety protocols and things like that. So I guess two-pronged. Doesn't baseball have something like that to come out and say, hey, while we're figuring this out, here, baseball fans, is what it would look like. How cool will this be when the Yankees take on the Red Sox 19 million times because they're in close proximity with each other? You know what I mean? Like, isn't there something like that's in a top drawer for them to bust out?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think the problem is that schedule is probably not something that they feel completely wedded to at this point. I mean, they do have the framework of a schedule, 82 games. From what I understand, they'll play 2 home-and-home series against teams in their division and 1 home-and-home series against the like division of the other league, the interleague game. So that really reduces travel, which I think is a great idea. I love the idea that it really reinforces the value of winning your division in a short season, 82 games. You're playing most of your games within your division. So if you finish first place, that's awesome. You've earned it. And the postseason will be different. You'll get 7 teams in each league instead of 5. The first round, you'll have wild card series, 3 games all in one ballpark, best out of 3, and instead of the 1-game knockout. So those things are in place. I just don't think they've locked down the schedule enough to say, here it is, public. Here's what you can look forward to. But I do think it's a good idea, Rich, that anything they can give fans about hope of a baseball season and what it looks like, that has to be a good thing, rather than, these updates on negotiations, which on a daily basis are not good. I mean, I haven't heard anything positive coming out of these talks on a daily basis.
I mean, my spirits perked up even hearing you describe that, Tom. I'll be honest with you. I'm like, okay, so that sounds good. So that would be the American League and the National League East face one another, and likewise Central and West, right? And then and then we'll just have to deal with the Toronto of it all in the American League and National League East about going from Canada to America, which I imagine is going to be something of an issue to deal with. But I mean, that's a bridge to cross.
Yeah, no, that is an issue right now. That there is obviously no crossing the border. So my solution would be that they train at their spring training site in Dunedin, Florida, and the Blue Jays play their home games at Tropicana Field. I mean, you can do that. You can share the ballpark. They'll be playing the Rays a lot anyway. So there might be one or two places where the ballparks would have to be, played in a neutral or shared situation. But I think the idea of playing, essentially reinforcing your regional rivalries, is a really cool idea. And maybe there's something in that going forward as well.
So I guess last one for you is percentage-wise it for me. Because again, right now it seems pretty dark. There's not much dawn. You did give a soft deadlines, and that usually does spur action. And I guess just to reiterate, you think both sides are aware of the fallout that would happen if they throw their arms up over economic problems, not public and health problems, right? So
yeah, and that's why I'm optimistic, and that's why I would say, if you want a percentage, say 2/3, 66%. I just imagine, two kids standing on a cliff and saying, "Man, what would it feel like if we jumped off this cliff?" You know what it feels like if you're players and owners, if you jump off this cliff, and what the repercussions are. So that to me is the strongest motivator to get a deal done. And again, 82 games sounds right. It's virtually the half of a season, but you could still have a 60-game season. And again, the whole key is you need a viable postseason to have that billion-dollar payout of the national TV money. And that's why I think there has to be some sort of bonuses attached to player pay, because if there is a second wave of coronavirus and that wipes out the postseason, that wipes out $1 billion in TV money. That's really significant when it comes to the ability to pay the players. But, yeah, I think, listen, you remember that, you probably do, the 81 season, the split season, they came back and, you could get a playoff spot in the second half of the season, and that was only, 40-something games or something like that, 40 to 50 games. Is it ideal? No, but I still think you could have a 45 to 50-game season and go into a postseason. But I think 82 is right now, this is the deadline that's in front of us. Again, I'm optimistic that baseball finds a way to get the sport on the field.
Me too. Tom, thanks for the time. I trust everybody in your world is happy and healthy, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully I get to see you at a ballpark in July or somewhere after that.
Well, I guess, again, for sure, press access would be restricted, right? I mean, at least that. Has that even been agreed to? Protocols? I mean, has baseball got anything agreed to?
No, I've asked about that, Rich, and they'd be happy to have anybody who wants to come out and cover the games. Listen, you're going to have empty ballparks, so there's plenty of seats available in terms of social distancing for media members. I think the one change you would see is one broadcast crew doing the game. In other words, a road team wouldn't be sending their camera operators and even announcers out there, just to keep those numbers down. But otherwise, yeah, anybody who wants to come out to the game, I'm sure they're welcome to come out and cover it. You're not going to get clubhouse access.
Right.
But you can get a good seat in the stands.
There you go. Good seats are available. Thanks for the call, Tom. Really appreciate it. You be well. We'll chat soon, hopefully,
you got
about
it. You too,
a return to the sport. That's Tom Verducci. Geico wants to give back to you folks because they see everything that you're sharing online. They see your savage dance moves, your DIY haircut fails, you're into lip sync star. Now Geico's turn is to share with you too with the Geico Give Back. A 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies for current and new customers. And because Geico's committed for the long haul, the 15% credit lasts your full policy term. Please visit geico.com/giveback for info and eligibility. Again, geico.com/giveback. My first thought when I heard, hey, Toronto playing in Tampa, I mean, that's a significant disadvantage for them. And then I'm thinking, well, there's no fans. So it's like there's really no, I guess the only home field advantage would be it's your clubhouse.
I guess.
Right?
But if we're just showing up to the games in uniform and playing anyway,
But
you're not really in
some
the
of the
clubhouse.
weren't some of the protocols though is that there's no visiting clubhouse anymore?
Yeah, you're
Right.
just
That actually both clubhouses are used by the home team to keep the guys separate.
right.
And visiting players get dressed and show up to the
like
ballpark dressed like
they get off the
Little
bus.
League.
Little
Yeah,
League.
exactly.
It's like Little League.
It's like the old days.
Like you show up dressed. Or like what I did covering spring training one year for ESPN when I would show up. Well, I first showed up in full suits.
Yeah.
I first showed up in full suits in my first spring training, and the producer and photographer, the cameraman, who was there and had done many, many grapefruit leagues, were saying to me, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, did they laugh at you?
And they laughed at me, and I'm like, "Well, I'm here to work." And they're like, "Well, yeah, you've got 1 15-second on camera for the 2.5-minute piece that we're doing on the Texas Rangers here today in Port Charlotte, Florida, where it's 95 degrees and humidity at the same time. So you show up in shorts and a shirt, and then you just change into your dress shirt and jacket. You don't even need to bring your pants for your suit. We'll shoot you from the belly up. That's the way it works." I'm like, "Well, why don't you tell me that before I left the hotel?" And then, but I would go into like some men's room.
Yep.
And I changed there. Not saying that, I guess that Alex Bregman would have to change in a men's room, but doing it at the hotel and showing up on the bus and showing up 2 hours before the game, I mean, if that's what you have to do. I'll repeat it again. I'm going to be a broken record until this thing actually gets done. And it's going to be 2 weeks of it. You heard what, June 13th was the soft deadline. And soft deadlines become hard deadlines, and that's when deals get done. Because the posturing has just begun. And the Players Association response is going to be a similar middle finger back. That's what I expect. Because if they viewed the first proposal from the owners as such, it's going to be the exact same thing back. It's what he said in terms of like, if you're an owner and you're saying the reason why the financial landscape has changed is because we know now, okay, we know now that there's no fans. And the language in the contract in March that we made that allows us to revisit this issue now, even though you could say that we assumed there was no fans then, and that we signed that, made that agreement about prorated salaries in March. It's apparently that language in there says about good faith negotiation if things change, force majeure, pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to say is in these contracts. So they can come back and say, let's talk some more. But the first thing they say is that sliding scale that they know would be viewed by an already jittery, distrustful union. And I'm not saying that the union's to be distrusted. The union is distrustful of the owners. Which is, once again, I mean, how I think we're going to see this more and more and more, certainly as the NFL season approaches. How crucial was it for, I think, the NFL, and I know players were not happy about it, that collective bargaining agreement deal got done when it did, right before the pandemic was announced as such, right then and there. If you remember, they made, it was it the 2 weeks before the new league year began, or 10 days before the new league year began? The new league year began on that Wednesday.
Was it the 8th?
The New Year League began, I believe, on the 13th. If I'm not mistaken, the new league year began on the Wednesday in which Rudy Gobert was announced to be testing positive for coronavirus, and the NBA shut down. I do believe that the Players Association voted on that collective bargaining agreement about a week before. If they had said no, and then everything that the NFL would be going through right now about play or no play, schedule or no schedule, draft or no draft.
Yeah, that Wednesday was the 11th.
Virtual Wednesday the 11th. Okay.
Yeah. Rudy Gobert.
Correct. And that was the new league year.
Right.
All of the conversation we're having right now would be under the construct of, well, the players rejected the collective bargaining agreement, and this year would be the last before they have to talk about the whole thing. And the conversation about playing this season would have everything on the table that baseball has on it, including the level of distrust between both sides. The whole idea of pushing the virtual offseason another 2 weeks, asking players to do X, Y, and Z of any sort would be. So that's the thing I'm trying to keep in mind with baseball, is that their collective bargaining agreement would be up after next season, just like what the NFL is about to go through or would have. The level of trust that's already maybe not even there, as you know, almost a large enough amount of players didn't even vote on it, and that was the margin of difference potentially if all of them voted no. It was a close call.
Yeah, that's Sunday the 15th was when it was voted in.
Really? So the new league year hit and then they voted on it? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at it right now.
I don't know.
The vote happened over the weekend. Rudy Gobert was the 11th. The 15th, it was agreed to.
Oh, so then maybe the new league year was the 18th that the NFL started. I think it was late. You're right.
Right. Because then that following week is when all the states started issuing the stay-at-home.
And then the March Madness got canceled.
Right.
That's right.
Gosh,
That's what it was. I know.
Ago.
Doesn't it feel like years ago? And it's only a little more than 2 months ago. That's why Verducci's talking about, we were, dude, late January, getting set to go to the Super Bowl. That was this year.
I know.
Okay, late January, getting set to go to the Super Bowl. The conversations lit up our phone lines about the cheating scandal for the Astros.
Oh, I completely forgot about it.
The Astros cheating scandal and Jim Crane,
And
the
the
awful
penalty
way that he
and
handled it.
waiting for the Red Sox.
Right. And the mealy-mouthed way that Jose Altuve was
mealy-mouthed,
handling
that's good.
everything.
Yeah, and then the
Man.
videos being leaked on Twitter, and the was he wearing a wire? Why did he not take his shirt off?
All of that happened
gosh,
this
dude.
year.
Oh, jeez. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I heard about this. I haven't seen it yet. Have you heard about this?
What is
the
this?
Washington Nationals unveiled their championship rings today, and my new favorite brewery, I don't know where Departed Souls is. Is it in New Jersey or something like that? I think I read that. Trash Can Banger is the new victory beer to keep the celebration going, and you can see it's the old breakout Astros colors right there.
That's
So bad,
fantastic.
but it's
Yeah, the
fantastic.
Jersey City Brewery.
Jersey City Brewery. I don't know if it is in Jersey or they just call it Jersey City Brewery. I don't know.
Trash Can Banger IPA.
It feels like it didn't even happen.
I completely
You
forgot
know
about
what we could do?
the
We could do
scandal.
next week at some point.
What
If you
happened to Boston?
Here's what we should do. Let's use this moment here on Sirius XM and YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show, and everybody in the 454s in the wormhole. You want to chime in too? You put it there. TJ Jefferson will monitor it. I'll put you to work. We should do a segment. It happened this year.
By the way, we're only 5 months into the year.
I know that.
Yeah.
There's still 7 months left.
I know. It happened this year. And it'd be like, that's right, it happened this year.
This is a crazy year. Tom Brady leaves the Patriots.
It feels like Mahomes' fourth quarter comeback
It's like,
might as well be in black and white with John Facenda
Oh my
voicing
gosh,
it over.
man. It's in the vault, the Super Bowl one.
Dude, that was 3.5 months ago. You know?
I was texting this with TJ. I was trying to think about the last normal day I remembered. And it was the Saturday when we got to Miami.
Well, you also had the birth of a child. So
Yeah.
that had to be out-of-body experience
I
for
understand,
you, too.
but that, like...
mine was doing that last game
It was crazy.
and leaving.
We were
the last
watching
game.
the Sixers play the Lakers. And LeBron passed Kobe for third on the all-time scoring list.
And then Kobe... Oh,
And
you
then-
mean so then Kobe died
And then the
next
next day, Kobe died.
Yep.
Yeah,
And we
by
were
the way,
talking about
that
Kobe
happened
all
this year
night.
too. That happened
But like
this year
that
too.
feels like the last normal day where something insane didn't happen like every week.
You're not wrong, man. That Saturday, yeah.
Saturday before when we got to Miami for the Super Bowl.
And Kobe
week.
tweeted out a congratulatory
Kobe tweeted out congratulating
tweet to
LeBron.
right.
And then
I got to the airport the next day. You were already there, right?
I was already there. We had dinner. And then
news hit, and
You were on
everybody's
the
phones
plane.
lit up. Everybody's phone lit up. We were about to board.
that felt like the last normal
I saw
day
Tony
that
Gonzalez,
Saturday.
who was about to board that flight from L.A. to Miami. He was on his phone, like staring at it. Glazer was there. Everybody was just like walking around like a total zombies. On the flight, we were just everybody waiting for Wi-Fi to turn on so we could get some sort of update to refute what was happening. Or oh God, you're not wrong. That happened this year.
That's like the
That
end of
happened
reality.
this year. I mean,
That was pretty much the end.
by the way, Joe Burrow lighting up college football
Yeah, that
and
was
lighting
this
up.
year.
You know, that happened this year. That feels like 19 years ago. I know we're kind of doing the segment right now all of a sudden, but maybe
we're
we
just
could just
talking it
plan
out.
on it because I'm sure stuff happened in all different manners of sports in January and February and early March that feels like it was 19 million years ago because of how life has changed. And now it feels, again, just to bring the whole first hour full circle, just feels like we're, falling apart at the seams as a country and a world just spinning off its axis. And, man, that's, again, why we need sports more than ever. So seeing La Liga say we'll give it a try in Spain, and then the UK saying, we'll give it a try with the Premier League, and hockey starting this week with an announcement of here's what our schedule would look like when and where we figure it out. And then the NBA with David Aldridge joining us in about a half an hour time, putting together the pieces of what looks like an all Walt Disney World in Orlando. Spot. Although they're opening up, right, to the general public.
Yes. Reservations, Disney's open.
Is Vegas is soon to open up
Like
too? Have
within
they
a
made
couple-
an announcement?
I've been getting
Yeah.
emails from casinos the last
within the
week
next couple weeks.
about
I
big
heard-
deals for June.
Have they been offering to fly people there for free? Is that what I've heard?
I haven't seen that, but I wouldn't surprise me.
Because that's the other spot for the NBA to go.
I've got some
And they
great
could-
deals on hotels if you guys want.
I mean,
everybody else, we're all getting it.
again, I mean, look, you just
free
you
flight
just-
packages.
You just
You
go
got
and
free flight packages?
Yeah, they'll add in flight.
you just disinfect the hell out of these hotels and then the buses and make everybody sign, whoever works on any of those spots, that they must quarantine.
There's enough wings of a hotel that you could put a team up like in a heartbeat.
Well, some of the ones I've
Multiple
seen,
games.
all the workers are getting tested. They're going to have temperature, like thermo. So anyone over 100 degrees won't be allowed in the casino. Like they've got all these measures in these emails that I've been getting.
Don Bowie, our EP's like wondering how you deal with the chips. Hey, I've seen
Yeah,
gloves.
exactly.
Put on the gloves. Unless you, again,
Virtual chips.
who
Don't
the hell
touch your
knows?
face. I mean,
Virtual
I don't know,
chips.
you just wear gloves, or you just I
Come up with that.
I can't
I don't
wait
know,
to
man.
go back to Vegas, but I don't know how it's going to work. How are you going to sit at a poker table?
I'm not touching a slot machine. Not happening. Who touched that? Not happening.
I wipe it down? I don't know. Man,
Hey, man,
it's crazy.
let's do that next week. We'll have a
All right.
segment. It happened this year.
It's pretty good. Write that down.
Or we could
crazy.
just do like this day in history. It happened this year. Just like let's recall something that happened
3
this
months
year.
ago today. Yeah.
Joe Burrow happened this. Joe Burrow happened this. It feels like Joe Burrow is 19 Heisman Trophy winners removed.
It's true.
Like all the Tua stuff. Like the workout and the
The combine seems like it was a year ago.
combine happened.
It happened.
Dude,
It seems like it was a year ago.
and here's the crazy thing, and just
Goodell in his basement seems like it was a year ago.
Goodell in his basement
Seems
was a month
year-
ago.
Exactly.
It seems years
It
ago.
seems like it was years ago.
Look up the draft date. Was it the 25th, 26th, 27th of April?
It's nuts.
It's right. Like it could be the
We might be a month.
I still feel like
it was the 23rd.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm hosting the draftathon from that first night.
I mean,
I
that
think
was
it's
great.
still going.
I watched all of it. We watched all of it.
Hey, it was great.
It was great, Rich.
Yeah.
I mean, that one room.
I know. I mean, you're looking at all these games that they're re-airing
Rugby
right
started
now.
in Australia, too.
NFL Network re-airing, Seattle and Green Bay right now. I think it was from this year. Yeah, there's Matt LaFleur strolling the sideline. The playoff rewind.
The Super Bowl does seem like it was
Forever ago.
It really does.
That happened this year.
It's nuts. It's crazy.
Oh, by the way,
This year,
did you
3
hear what
months
Did you hear what Matt LaFleur said on local radio up there in Wisconsin?
No.
Oh, we'll talk about it. David Aldridge of The Athletic. When's the NBA going to make the announcement the NHL did and what we're hoping baseball's going to do? And then, one more last dance. Okay, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, it's DA's exit interview.
We have not had an we've done a ton of great exit
We
interviews.
have.
Mike Pereira. Wait till you hear where he's joining us from. He told me he could join us. This is the spot where he could join us at that time, top of the final
When
hour.
he's in a spot, he's in a location.
He's in a spot where I had to respond to him by text, like, thank you for saying you'll do it, but how's your reception? And he's like, I was there just today. It's great. It's a very strong signal. And he's back there again.
I can't wait.
And Mike O'Malley will be joining us on this program. I've known him for a very long time, and we'll have a great sports and pop culture conversation with the man on TNT's Snowpiercer. It's already been picked up for another season. We're going to be picked up for another hour on NBCSN next. Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Good to see you, gentlemen, right here.
Very much. Very much good to see you, too, Rich.
Yeah, right back at you.
Yeah.
Great to see everyone, not just you, Rich.
I have a friend who, when he sees someone coming towards him, like in a room that he's supposed to know, he can tell I'm supposed to know this person, but I don't. He goes, there he is. There he is.
How are you as a ref, though?
Strictly what's called an AR, assistant referee. So I'm the guy who runs on the sideline with the flag.
I thought AR meant whole ref.
Well, that's what.
The shorts are pretty short, too.
Shorts are
I mean,
pretty
they're
short.
stocked in
Look at
length
that.
right there.
Look at that ample thigh.
That's a ham hock right there.
Look at that. That's ready for market.
So,
You might want to smoke that for a couple days.
You guys want a slice?
Put some hickory around it. You know what I would genuinely love for you as a second career, if you ever decided you wanted a second career? Finally be a broadcaster. Be someone who's calling color. Right?
Rich, maybe you could give me a break.
I mean, that would boost ratings for whatever sport you were talking about.
What if I took over the Rich Eisen show? Ron Burgundy did help announce the National Curling Finals in Ottawa, Canada. And they had all these ads for Tim Hortons Coffee, which is a big coffee chain for our Canadian listeners. And I just kept saying, all the signage, I'm like, who the hell is Tim Horton? Who does he think he is?
is there any possibility that we see a Step Brothers sequel?
We haven't never talked about this face-to-face in public.
No, we haven't.
So let's break some ground here. Are we going to do Step Brothers too?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen either. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Put up the Photoshop anyway.
Oh, you make sense in that world somehow, Rich.
And now, turn it up. Let's go.
This is The Rich Eisen Show, live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
I've said it before, I've said it again. Baseball cannot throw its hands up and say, we're not playing because we couldn't figure out the money.
The Rich Eisen Show. Earlier on the show, MLB Network reporter Tom Verducci. Coming up, senior NBA writer for The Athletic, David Aldridge. Fox Sports rules analyst, Mike Pereira. Plus, from TNT's Snowpiercer, actor Mike O'Malley. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Hey, everybody. We're here live in Los Angeles on a Friday. The Rich Eisen Show coming your way, as always, noon to 3 Eastern on SiriusXM Channel 211 or YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show is our live stream. And we say hello here for the final 2 hours of our show, as always, to our friends and colleagues and fans who take us in on NBCSN. We say a good Friday to you. And before I introduce my two guys across the aisle, I just want to say this off the top. I said something similar at the very part of our program. You know, we're always trying to be as cognizant and aware as possible about what goes on outside these walls and whatever goes on outside these walls and what we might be able to do to serve those seeking a break from it. And we've been on every single weekday since the pandemic hit because we made a collective decision here on the Rich Eisen Show to come in and also be wise when we go home and trust one another to do the right things and stay as healthy as possible for our families as well as for our viewing and listening audience. And now I guess we're going to start to do the same with what's going on in the world, and certainly places like Minneapolis and Louisville, the great states of Minnesota and Kentucky. And for those out there in need of a break, and those out there who are seeking justice and peace, and hopefully finding it fast, I want to say we're thinking of you and we're with you. So I just want to say that as we start the show, and I turn to you, Chris Brockman, and I say good Friday to you.
Good Friday to you,
Mike
my friend.
Del Tufo, a good Friday to you, or I could say good Wednesday, good Monday, because I do believe you wore that same pullover on both of those days of this week.
I wear this all the time.
Okay.
It's cold in here.
Wow.
I changed the shirt.
Good to see both of you, gents.
Good to see you, Rich.
Hey, bud.
All right, 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. We've got lots of time to take your phone calls. Don Bowie, our EP, put up for everybody who we've got here coming up over the next couple of hours. David Aldridge is going to join us from The Athletic, my colleague from ESPN way back in the day. I did a lot of tosses to David Aldridge's reports, many of them covering the Chicago Bulls in The Last Dance. He was all over that documentary. And I'm wondering when we're going to hear something from the NBA about return to play. There's been a lot of chatter that June 1 would be the day, and that is after this weekend. June 1 would be the day that Adam Silver makes an announcement of return to play. Here's what it will look like. We already heard from the NHL this week what it would look like. Maybe the NBA will do that before announcing the when. We're all hearing the where could be Disney World, which obviously would dovetail with one of its television partners, business interests in Disney. So we'll see how all that works. David Aldridge will join us. Then a couple of Mikes, Pereira and O'Malley. Pereira, the former head of NFL refs, now Fox Sports rules analyst, will join us. And because there's lots to talk about rules that were passed by the NFL yesterday, rules that were withdrawn prior to the NFL voting yay or nay yesterday, rules that were tabled. The difference between withdrawn and tabled, what in the hell does that mean? Mike Pereira, who's been in a lot of these meeting rooms with coaches and general managers and owners and competition committees in his time being the top zebra in all the NFL land, he will join us. And Chris Brockman,
hey, bud.
He will join us from the water.
The water?
He is going to be fishing.
Wait, what? Really?
He is going to be fishing.
Is he?
I asked him when he agreed to do the show last night via text. I'm like, you sure the phone line's going to be fine? He says the signal is strong. He was there already that very day.
Is he West Coast or East Coast?
He's
fishing?
West Coast fishing.
Okay.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
Oh, my goodness. That was a Grateful Dead album.
West Coast fishing?
Yeah.
PH, right?
Yeah,
is the fishing.
For sure.
And then Mike O'Malley will join us. He is in the new TNT hit show, Snowpiercer. He is also a writer and producer of note. He has worked with LeBron James on television projects of note. And he is going to be joining us on this program. And lots to talk about with him. He's also, if you remember back in the day, the Rick from the ESPN commercials to announce, this is how long ago it was, their websites.
So great.
Their websites creation.
1999.
And then when ESPN Plus was created recently, they brought him back. The Rick came back. Right. And he doesn't look like he aged a day. And he still fits into the same, what is it? Was it a Ray Bork sweater? You never saw a number, right?
No, yeah. It's just, I think it was just a regular Bruins sweater.
Right?
And the Red Sox, backwards Red Sox hat. Living in his garage.
I mean, just the greatest, man.
The greatest.
So, at any rate, he will be joining us. And he's also a youth baseball diehard here in the Los Angeles area. He is the guy, one of the guys to go to if you want your son or daughter to try baseball and say, what's a good league? What's a good spot? He's really just a dynamite individual.
Amazing.
He really is. So he will be joining us later on in this program. 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. So, in the same way that we're going to be having an exit interview with David Aldridge for The Last Dance, I guess this will be our last Dance exit interview. I mean, we talked with Ahmad Rashad afterwards, Rod Thorne afterwards. We talked with Will Perdue during, and we talked with Shaq afterwards. But he didn't really sit down for the documentary, but I just wanted to get his thoughts on it. We talked to Charles Barkley. We talked to Bob Costas, Andrea Kramer. A lot of exit interviews. David will be joining us. So we like to put buttons on things, right? And with The Last Dance, when it was going down, one of the many reasons I thought why it was so popular is we were able to plug it into some real-time, real-live, current sports conversations. Sure, we relitigated the Dream Team and Isaiah Thomas and other issues that Horace Grant would probably be at the front of the line to voice. But current issues like Brady leaving New England, that dynasty, that dynastic pairing of Brady and Belichick breaking up, and why, even though it lasted almost 3 times as long as the Jordan's dynastic run. I guess if you want to go from 91 to 98, like an 8-year run, Belichick and Brady lasted 20 years, by the way. Everyone's like, how come you couldn't go longer? 20 years. 20 years it lasted.
20's a long time.
And another conversation that this plugged into was Jordan Love's drafting in Green Bay, planning for the end of a run, or as Brett Favre appeared on this show a few Wednesdays ago, getting the wheels turning in Aaron Rodgers' head to maybe speed up a departure. Because at some point, you're going to have to find out who you have, what you have in Jordan Love to either flip him a la Garoppolo or flip Rodgers a la Favre for Rodgers. So we heard from Favre after the drafting, got his opinion on it, said he spoke to Rodgers, and he termed him as saying, surprised. He said, I don't want to share any more of our conversation, but I'll just say he was surprised. Then Aaron Rodgers spoke a few Fridays ago, sort of like a Friday news dump. He met with the media, and he turned himself as surprised and handled it totally first-rate class act. Not Jordan Love's fault. But it does. What did he say? He said something along the lines of how it messes with the controllables, I guess, in a way. Makes the controllables less able to control. Whatever. We've now heard from Matt LaFleur. The Packers head coach made his first public radio appearance, and he did it on ESPN Wisconsin, and asked about the maneuver and how to interpret the Packers' decision to select Love. He said the following: it was just one of those situations where there were a couple guys targeted that had just previously been picked, and Jordan was the next guy on the board, so we went with the best player at the time.
The old best player available.
Now then.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, they could have. He could have been sitting there on the board. The question was, they were sitting on the board deeper down. They moved up the board to go get him. So you could have said, hey, Brandon Ayuk was somebody we could have used. We could have popped up to go get him. He was a top player on our board, but we just stayed put. Of all the people to trade up to go make sure the best player on your draft board was going to be yours, you couldn't wait. Had to be Jordan Love. It just doesn't. It doesn't pass the so-called smell test. And I'm not saying that he is being shifty at all, because he was flat out saying that he and Rodgers talk 4 times a week whenever we get those opportunities to meet in those individual meetings, and I feel really good about where we're at. We both understand that this is a business. I totally believe that. I think he and LaFleur could be fine, for sure, that when they're in the proverbial football foxhole together this fall, knock on wood if you're with me, that they'll be able to dial up plays and dial things up, and Rodgers will definitely look at him potentially, it's on occasion, and think this is a guy who is the man who wrecked the buffet at the Lambeau Club that he is planning on never leaving, right? And so he might use it as fire, as Favre suggested, and certainly if you read between the lines of what Rodgers said. But you could sit here also and say, well, your draft board evaluation had Jordan Love that high. You couldn't wait 5 more spots. You didn't want to run the risk thinking that somebody would trade up to go get him from where you were sitting. You had to move up those spots. And then there's this comment as we are looking at the screen of the rest of the draft. Him mentioning in ESPN Radio in Wisconsin that when asked about areas to improve upon in 2020, he said one area we really need to improve on is creating more explosive plays. We were pretty efficient, but we were 23rd in explosive plays. That starts with play calling. It's on him. And maybe take a few more chances to help generate those plays down the field. See, it's on him. There's no eye in Matt or LaFleur. But you want to look on the screen and look for those explosive play guys that they might have gotten. The one that might be the most explosive is a guy who's not going to have any chance of starting for any time soon, potentially. I know A.J. Dillon might have some explosive plays in him from Boston College. But Josiah DeGuara is a tight end who they're planning on using in a use check fullback type role. I mean, where's the explosive plays coming from when you had the most deep wide receiver draft around? Matt LaFleur, call the Rich Eisen Show. I've got questions. You've got answers.
Didn't draft a wide receiver. More explosive plays.
Those two comments leapt out at me.
Got it.
Top player was our top player on our board. We just went with the top player on the board. The problem is where you were on the board wasn't where you were originally slated to draft. You had to improve that position specifically to match your board with the reality that you didn't do for the kid Ayuk that everybody adored and was sitting there on the board. And then explosive plays. You want explosive plays, then draft it. Right?
Lots of guys were right there just waiting. No, trade up for a quarterback.
And again,
come on.
I'll just relitigate this since that's the word we're using. Raheem Mostert is still running. I think he hit his head on the goalpost moments ago in the Field of Jeans in Northern California against that Packers defense that they could have also used to improve right there. And if Ayuk beats this team in the air with a big chunk play, then the Packers will be losing to the same team again, and the guy that they could have gotten had they moved up maybe again. Because I'm assuming if you're looking at the draft board, guys that they had to have eyed this kid. That's why I asked Zimmer yesterday. I tried to get some fun with him, the head coach of the Vikings, that when you moved out of the 25th overall spot to trade down to 31 so San Francisco could go get this dynamic receiver, potentially sparking the Packers to move up to go get Jordan Love because Ayuk was gone. And that's now created an issue at the quarterback spot of your, we assume, main rival for you in the NFC North. What'd you think of that? And he's just like, yeah, they don't want to play Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think that's his most fun bulletin boardy thing that you could get out of Mike Zimmer with a question and answer crowbar like I attempted yesterday. All that stuff just kind of leapt out at me, Christopher.
As I expected.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not buying it. Color me skeptical.
No, I know that. Hey, look, man.
It's
something to just keep an eye on. Don't forget. That team, even with the issues in the chunk play department and Matt LaFleur's first year coaching that he raised his hand and say the play calling might have been off, that team was still one Jacob Hollister inch away from scoring against the 49ers, away from being the 1 seed in last year's NFC playoffs. So maybe they could do it again. Just got to beat the 49ers when they face them, and Green Bay faces them. Let me see right here. And the second Sunday in November. Oh, my goodness gracious. Look at that on Sunday Night Football. On Thursday Night Football. Short week. Oh, boy. Wow.
baby.
Green Bay at New Orleans on Sunday Night Football, Week 3. Green Bay at Minnesota, Week 1. Come on.
Packers 1-3 before the bye week.
Come on now. Come on now.
By the way,
By the way, and look at that Monday night against
the Packers could start 1-8.
Well, Favre said if it starts 0-3, he sees Jordan Love starting right now.
That schedule is really hard to begin the year, man.
That was the one most eyebrow-raising comment Favre had when he was on our show a few Wednesdays ago that I even would disagree with, but I think he would know how Green Bay fans react and media reacts a lot better than I would. If they go 0-3, the discord he thinks could get ugly fast. And suggested Jordan Love even getting out there.
Look at those first 9 games.
And by the way, the game against Atlanta, I've got something to share with you about the Atlanta Falcons and a dream I had overnight. By the way, and for the long-term fans of this show, the second dream I had about the Atlanta Falcons in the history of this program.
Oh, yeah. The first one you were coaching.
I dreamt I was their coach during training camp.
That's phenomenal. Which we almost made happen.
Dan Quinn almost made it happen, correct. I brought it up to Dan Quinn. Talk about psychotherapy and being needed. So it's David Aldridge coming up next from The Athletic. What do we expect from the NBA and when? Mike Pereira and Mike O'Malley, the final hour. Your phone calls as well at 844-204-RICH. The Rich Eisen Show live from Los Angeles on NBCSN. All right, everybody.
Those first 8 games,
that's
guys. Come on.
That's a rough.
1-7.
Woof.
Can you put it up there again, Don? There we go.
So
at Minnesota, and we confirmed yesterday, Green Bay's never started a season at Minnesota. The reverse has been the case, but never at Minnesota to start a season. So you're coming right out of the box, man.
So let's say they beat the Lions week 2, right?
You can't just say that either. The Lions in the first half of the season last year, you never know.
Before Stafford got hurt, he was having a
now.
phenomenal season.
At New Orleans on a Sunday night.
No chance.
Now, again, you have to understand there could be, a quarter of the fans in the stadium if we're lucky.
But if they're pumping in crowd noise.
I don't know what they're going to do. The NFL has so many weeks to figure this thing out. Then home for Atlanta on a Monday night in front of who knows who's calling that game for ESPN. As you know, I still think it should be Breen.
Well, could be you and me.
The bye week. You're
I'm mixing it.
If you're a Packer fan, do you sign for 2-2?
Yes.
You signed for 2-2 going into the bye right now.
Oh yeah.
Win the games at home, lose the ones on the road.
But if it's 1-3, and let's say those explosive plays aren't there in the first 4 weeks.
RELAX, they're not doing anything. Jordan Love's not ready. Jordan Love's definitely not ready to go to Tampa.
Especially if the Bucs are 4-0.
And then J.J. Watt, who says that he wants to prove it. Like, don't even talk about contract with me. I want to prove it. It's time to play some tag. And then home for Minnesota at San Francisco. Holy crap.
I mean, if the Bucs are 4-1 to start the year, and then they're 1-3, oh baby.
Holy crap.
I'll tell you, they could be 2-6 the first 9 games.
Mm-hmm. Here you go. All right, so David Aldridge will be getting him on the phone hopefully shortly, and then we'll take some phone calls and whatnot here on the Rich Eisen Show. Mike Pereira and Mike O'Malley. Yeah, let me now that my phone is unfrozen. You got something over there? Okay.
Unfrozen caveman phone.
Okay.
Cave phone.
Yeah, unfrozen caveman phone. Let me get where Pereira exactly is. He is in a reservoir, water fishing in a reservoir.
Is he on a boat or is he just...
What reservoirs are you on the land?
Huh?
You land reservoir. My police chief used to do it all the time. You're land fishing.
Oh, okay.
I bet he's land fishing.
Okay.
Reservoirs, because they might not let you on a boat. But it depends if it's private or public.
It is.
Okay.
Find out.
Pereira is a legend. I mean, that's amazing.
I don't know
if
he's
going to... I checked it yesterday. I'm good.
I mean,
huh? Yeah, no.
Him saying like, oh, no, I checked the spot yesterday. We're good.
Yep.
He's so Pereira's the best.
844-204-RICH, number to dial. Call it, folks. We'll have some time to take your calls here on The Rich Eisen Show. Eight 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. Chris Brockman, do we have a poll question fashioned over there at Rich Eisen Show? You're giving me the look of you don't have one. That would be so disappointing to me that there's no poll question for people to vote on at Rich Eisen Show.
There was nothing really good on the day calendar today, and I don't have one.
So you don't have one?
No.
Okay.
Nothing real good. No celebrity birthdays. I did have an interesting conversation before with Adam, our call screener.
Yes.
Today's Carmelo Anthony's birthday today.
Okay.
And, a lot's been made about his career in the last couple of years. Whose career would you rather have, Carmelo Anthony or Vince Carter?
Oh, man.
No championships for either. Both kind of a dynamic scores.
Well, didn't Carmelo win one in college?
Well, yes, but and he's our greatest Olympic performer, but no NBA championships.
Which one would you choose? Because I'd go Vince.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of what Adam said too. The last few years, Vince is kind of just playing. He's on the roster. He's not averaging, like we used to seeing Vince Carter. I think I kind of take Carmelo Anthony. His peak was a little bit better than Vince Carter. Both Hall of Fame players. But
put it up there, Chris. Why not?
All right, I'll put it up there.
Why not? Apropos nothing.
Well, it's Melo's birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday to him. How many years is he?
36 for Carmelo.
36 years old.
Oh, baby.
Man, I feel so damn old.
Tell me about it, man.
And
2003 was a long time ago.
It's funny. I couldn't have felt any older watching The Last Dance. As we know, I snuck in there in episode 10 with my hair, my flowing mane. And some people, like Costas.
Looks the same.
David Aldridge, the same thing.
DA looks the same.
From The Athletic, my friend David Aldridge, DA here on the Rich Eisen Show, haven't aged a day. DA, not a day.
Richard, it's good to know that your TV isn't working very well. You need to work on the contrast.
Standard definition? The definition is standard? So what are you saying? How have you been? Are you well? Everybody in your family well, I hope, David? I'm knocking on wood here.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no COVID stuff. There's some other stuff, but that's, it is what it is. Everybody's dealing with something, so. But nothing with regard to the virus. So that's a blessing with older relatives, especially. And just trying to, navigate these uncharted waters.
No, I understand. I understand. Again, and I came on the air and I said, I hope everybody seeking justice and peace finds it immediately. And I'm assuming that's what you are referring to. And it's just, I guess for the purposes of this show, it's just another reason why, I think people seek out what maybe we're going to be talking about in sports world. And The Last Dance was so successful to just lose ourselves and forget about what's going on outside, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's part of. I wrote today that it's very difficult right now for me to be, all about sports. Sports is important, and
right.
We need to get back and open everything up. It's very difficult to have that kind of discussion right now. With everything that's going on in our country, and I understand. Believe me, and I'm sure you do too, Rich. We all understand that sports are important to people. They're important to us. They're how we've made a living. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I get it. I understand. I've made a living covering sports for a very long time, as have you, and we get that. And we know that it's important to a lot of people. It's important to us, right? I mean, it is. I want sports to come back, certainly, and I want the games to come back because I do think it will help. It will help a lot of people. But I know that it's also, there are people who aren't thinking about that right now, and I would just like people to be cognizant of that, to know that entertainment and distraction and all those things are not things that everybody has in the front of their consciousness right now.
Right.
So
I understand.
If we can all just understand that I think it will go a long way toward a lot of different things.
Well, then I'm particularly thankful of you taking the time today to call in.
Sure.
David.
No, I wasn't addressing that at you at all.
No, I didn't take it.
that
I didn't take it at that, but I just wanted to at least acknowledge and respect what you've just said, with at least me saying that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I do, very, very much so, because it's hard. It's hard right now.
No question about it, David.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I'm appreciative of you calling in, David Aldridge of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. Where do things stand, best you can tell? Because we did hear from the NHL this week, a format.
Yeah.
Man, you're seeing baseball having all sorts of collective bargaining arguments, it seems, that's bubbling to the surface. Where are things with the NBA, its union, and an announcement or for readiness to play again?
I think the NBA union situation is much better in terms of cooperation with the league than the baseball unions is. I mean, that just seems to be spiraling, out of control in baseball. The basketball union is working pretty much hand in glove with the league. I mean, there is literally a joint committee that's trying to come up with different scenarios. Now, they're not anywhere near finished yet, but they are working together, The union has basically signed off on, Orlando as the site of a playoff, tournaments. However, whatever format that ultimately becomes, the basketball players put money into escrow for the use of the owners in case the season were to be canceled for whatever reason. So the owners have some sort of financial certainty in terms of their losses being, stanched somewhat, right, for the rest of this year. So there, and the biggest thing, Rich, is that both the players and the owners both want to play. They both want this to continue. They want the season to continue, and they want it to conclude with postseason play and having a champion. So my experience with the league over many years is that when the players and the owners both want something to happen, it tends to happen. And so I think that's why, there's a lot of optimism, bordering almost on certainty, that there's going to be, a resumption of play at some point, probably in July, that would last into September at some point before it concludes with the finals.
Any idea if it's a two hub city, all one hub city, anything of that nature?
I think right now, I know there's been talk, about Houston as a possibility, but I know that Bob Iger's been pushing very hard for Orlando and Disney World. And again, I think the players in the main, you're not going to get 100% support on anything, but I think in the main, most players, most of their agents, there are some agents still holding out for Vegas for different reasons, but most people are all pointing in the direction of Orlando. Now, the shape of that will be determined by how many teams are in the tournament, how many regular season games you play. Do you play all those regular season games in Orlando? Do you play them off-site somewhere else? Do you play them in another city? That's maybe where another city comes in. But I think the coalition behind having your playoff tournament with however many teams qualify in Orlando has pretty much been signed off on by all the important parties involved.
Well, I'll tell you this: if I'm a player with a family and I got kids, and I want to bring them into the, to use the phrase, bubble community, Disney World wouldn't be a bad place if everybody can be. Let me know that they're safe.
Yeah,
the kids can do that while Dad tries to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy. That would be something I'd be more inclined to attempt.
Yeah, and that's part of it. That is definitely part of it. Is that there's just more for the families to do, for the kids to do, even for the players to do on off days. You can go play golf in Orlando on an off day.
True.
On one of their 87 golf courses that they have down there.
Right.
Whereas Vegas, it's not that Orlando isn't hot in the summer. It is. It's not that it's not humid. It is, but it's not 107 like it was yesterday in Las Vegas. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You can't go outside in Las Vegas in the summertime. You just can't. There's not much to do that doesn't give you, heat stroke. So, you've got to, so that's where I think a lot of people are leaning more towards Orlando than Vegas. Even though Vegas, in some ways, probably has more experience and would be easier to control a hotel, or at least a chain of hotels. If you had the Wynn and Encore, if you had Mandalay Bay and all, you could probably control that a little bit more, but there would be far less for families to do.
David Aldridge, athletic senior NBA writer here on the Rich Eisen Show. And so what about the format are you hearing? Because, you already hear somebody like Steve Kerr saying he's figuratively on a beach right now, like they're done. And then you hear Damian Lillard, and I think he's every right to say, I don't want to leave my family and my home or even bring them across the country if I'm just playing out a string. Like, you want to put me in a tournament where I've got a shot, where I can do my Dame time stuff, then I'm in. Where does that stand right now, do you think, David?
I think if you to kind of generalize in terms of where they are, I just think more people want more games, right? So my guess is you will have some sort of tournament type of playoff format where, whether it's one team, or whether it's two teams per conference and you wind up with 20 teams in this thing, or you come up with some way where everybody's involved. Now, I've been asking a lot of people the last few days, well, Golden State's already been eliminated from the playoffs. How do you uneliminate them? You know what I mean?
Especially, by the way, the most dangerous 15 seed in the history of 15 seeds if Klay Thompson's healthy, right?
Right. So and I get it. Look, I know you want compelling programming. You want Steph in the playoffs. I get it. You want Zion in the playoffs. I get it. You know what I mean? But,
sure.
And there's a basic fairness here. It's not like you played 5 games and then you shut the season down. You played 65. Okay, like you played most of the season. You played 80+% of the season already. So there has to be some sort of fairness with regard to that percentage of the season meaning something. It doesn't have to mean everything, but it should mean something, right? I think the argument of the Milwaukees of the world is somewhat compelling. We did play a lot of the season.
Yes.
And we were really good for most of that. And
yes.
we should be able to take some of that advantage to the postseason. And I tend to agree with that. So I think it will be. I don't think it'll be all 30. I just can't see that. I don't know how you can, other than them playing those 5 to 7 games to get to, because they have obligations to their local TV markets and their local TV partners. So everybody's got to get to 70 games so that they don't lose more money. You'll do that, right? So all 30 teams will play to get to 70. But how you then say that it's okay for Cleveland and New York and Golden State to compete for a championship this year, that just doesn't seem right to me.
David Aldridge here on the Rich Eisen Show. In the few minutes I have left with you, I've been conducting Last Dance exit interviews for a lot of people who now that it's all in the books. Did you learn anything watching it?
I can't say I learned anything, and that's just because I'm old and I was there for most of it.
Right.
So I saw most of it. I mean, you forget some things. That's a different point.
Sure.
Like I just forgot that Rodman just went to Vegas in the middle of the season.
That's
I
right.
forgot about that. I didn't remember that. I just forgot that he, in the middle of the finals, just left to go do a WCW event. And it just kind of reemphasized to me, I think a phenomenal job Phil Jackson did coaching that team those 3 years, because it could have gone off the rails 100 times. So you forget things that happen. And I'm just, what I've told people, Rich, is that I'm just glad that younger viewers and younger people who like the NBA now, fans under 40 who weren't there or they were infants when that was going on, I have no recollection of it. I'm just glad that they have some sense not only of how good Michael Jordan was, because he was that good. I mean, you remember, he was that good. I mean, we're not making that up. He was one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time, right? But how competitive and dynamic the league was in terms of the rivalries and the passions and the hatreds and all of those things that those teams had for one another, and how compelling that made the games. And so it wasn't. And what I'm trying to explain to people is that 85, 84 could be a hell of a game if they really hate each other and every possession is a battle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I mean, it's not just about shot efficiency all the time. The part of why some of us older people really came to love the NBA was because the competition was so visceral and real. And that made it compelling, even though they didn't score 115 points every game. It was still really fun to watch those games back in those years. So,
absolutely, it was.
I'm glad that people get to see that.
Me too, and I do remember part of the conversation being at the time, and this is legit. And now you look back, you're like, what the hell were people even saying? Like, yeah, but the Western Conference was so weak when Jordan would just win all the time, right? And then you saw, and then you also just saw too the people who he beat. He beats Magic, he beats Malone and Stockton, he beats Barkley and Phoenix, he beats Reggie Miller on the way, and he beats Patrick Ewing every single damn time, and then he beats Gary Payton and the Sonics when they were terrific, and then you see. The Pistons, who he couldn't beat to start, then he vanquishes them on the way. Right. And the number of people who every single time I'd sit there, I'm like, you know what? Every fan base is going to get theirs. During this 10-part documentary, every fan base is going to get theirs. And then they showed the trivia, the number of 60-win teams Jordan and the Phil Jackson and Pippen Bulls eliminated. Numbers 7 of them. That's an absurd number. An absurd number. Oh, by the way, and Shaquille O'Neal in Orlando, he wound up taken out too.
Correct.
It really was just remarkable in that regard. But last one for you here. Was there a story you told Jason Hare, the director, that you thought, man, that would have been great if they aired that we didn't see, that hit the cutting room floor? You were in the middle of so many great stories, from the Fugazi, I guess, slight that that Jordan created His name escapes me. The kid from the Washington, Bradford Smith.
Bradford Smith.
Just you were telling all these great stories. Was there one that you told that, man, I wish it made the final cut?
Yeah, I'm. You know what? A couple of people have asked me that, Rich, and honestly, I was surprised. They used me way more than I thought they would.
You're a great storyteller, David. You're a great storyteller.
I really didn't think. Well, here's the thing. Like I was one of the latter interviews that they did, and that's because of a lot of reasons. We just couldn't find a time that worked for either of us for a long time. And so I thought, and I'm not being like self-aggrandizing about this at all, Rich. I thought, okay, they've shot, they've done a lot of interviews. They've got all the tape that they're probably going to have, that they're going to. But there'll be, and this being in television. Television, you have to cover it with something, right? Like you can't just show blank screen. You have to cover it with something. So I thought, okay, I'll be the guy that fills in the gaps. The stuff the games they don't have tape of for whatever reason.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So I'll be that guy, and I'll be in like 2 or 3 times over the course. And you know what? I'd be fine with that. I was kind of expecting that. So I was pleasantly surprised they used most of my stories.
Well, David, if you were a role player or a bench player for The Last Dance, you were Vinny the Microwave Johnson, man. You were. I mean, you heated it up.
Or Steve Kerr, or one of those guys. I actually contributed more than I thought I was. So it was a pleasant surprise. I was happy with it. I can't complain about it.
That was great. I mean, really, the whole thing from soup to nuts was wonderful, and at least what they did use of you didn't wind up on an iPad being handed to Jordan because you didn't want to be one of those people in The Last Dance.
No, you didn't want to get the mocking laughter and the glove.
That's the last thing you wanted in The Last Dance, is to be on one of those iPads that Jason Hare handed Jordan, saying, "Here, check this one out."
Exactly.
David, thanks for the time.
Know what that means.
Yeah, you didn't want to be that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate the time,
Rich,
David.
It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Right back at you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's David Aldridge. Didn't want to be that guy. Oh, you're on that iPad. Again, that's the extra I want to see. Maybe we should get Jason Hare on one more time. Right?
I love that.
Get enough of it.
I love it.
Get enough of it. Your phone calls at 844-204-RICH when we come back here on the Rich Eisen Show. And I had a dream that involved the Atlanta Falcons again, man.
Oh, goodness.
Crazy. That's coming up.
Rich, you got to move on.
I got to move on, right? By the way, you have that drop ready because, again, I don't know why I have
I mean, I got to admit,
visions of the
first
Falcons
blush,
when I sleep.
It's a little weird, but
I don't know what to tell you, man. It's a good chat with David Aldridge. I mean, he's been there and done that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you've got a wife and kids.
Okay.
So imagine yourself with another child.
Yep.
I shouldn't ask you this question. Because you got a little baby right now, and I know what your Instagram stories account used to look like.
Still
you could choose between Vegas or Disney World to go play in the NBA as your bubble city.
Well, we're going to Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to Las Vegas.
Now, you'd get your own casino. Is that what you're saying? You get your own,
sure.
like Jordan.
Just give me a wing. Just give me one of the wings.
But it's not. What if they demand you play 100, 200?
I don't want to play
Brockman's horseshoe instead of Binions.
I don't want to play 100.
Yeah. Brockman wants to go to Binions.
It's going to be Brockman's horseshoe with a little.
That'd be great. I'm sure downtown is empty. Yeah, it's great. It'd be awesome.
The draft would have been.
I just kind of realized, who the hell am I asking?
No.
I mean, come on, this degenerate.
I don't want to.
He's going to.
Yeah, because Cage is not going to go on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride yet.
No, we're a few years.
But if you're one of the NBA players on the up and up, and you've got a wife, and that's all you have,
just a wife,
and 2 kids.
Say if you're like Chris Paul, who's got a family,
right? Correct.
Of course, you want to go to Disneyland.
Damn straight. Where I'm going to practice, and I know it's clean and it's safe, and it's just maybe for an NBA part of the park.
Or like
you're creating a bubble.
Or even the Currys who have 3 young kids.
Yes.
And
don't you think the Currys would want to go to hey, while I'm practicing, I'm winning, or I'm attempting to win, I know that my kids are, when there's no school, because school's out for summer, there's no Zooming, there's no remote learning, there's none of this, right? So, and I'm sure Bob Iger, if he's involved, he will roll out the red carpet. There'll be a lot of passports to fun given to the NBA.
They're not staying at the Contemporary. The Contemporary.
Podcast One is home to our podcasts. Listen and subscribe. You can catch all 3 hours whenever you want with your ear gate, to use the Michael Irvin phrase. I've never heard anybody else use that, but he uses that phrase about listening. He calls it putting it in your ear gate. You can do that with the Rich Eisen Show. 844-204-RICH, number to dial. We'll take your calls in a second. It's quite funny that Brockman, my man, Brockman, my friend, my producer across the aisle, who's, you got a lot going on. When you come here, you got a lot to do. But the poll question at Rich Eisen Show is in your purview. Didn't have one. Kind of made one up on the spot based on a conversation you had with Adam, our call screener, because it's Carmelo Anthony's 36th birthday.
Yeah.
And so I just said, what'd you talk with him about? And you're like, hey, whose career would you rather have, Carmelo Anthony or Vince Carter's? Because I guess Vince would be the closest to a contemporary.
Is kind of an equivalent to Melo.
Dynamic college career.
Dynamic player, college career, no NBA championship, long career.
Did Vince win one with Carolina?
Don't believe so.
So,
let me tell you. So I just threw it out there at Rich Eisen Show. Whose career would you want?
And you remember when Vince Carter, did he leave a series?
Playoff series against the Knicks.
To go graduate.
I think he missed a playoff game.
He missed a game to go graduate. And I remember the reason why that was particularly big on ESPN is because Stuart Scott delivered the commencement address when Vince Carter walked, which I know Stuart got a huge boost out of. Just him speaking to a graduating class at North Carolina. What a huge, he was walking on air. I remember that. That was the one where Vince walked. He gave that speech. So our poll question was based on just, you didn't have one. Now it's pissing you off. Because you're a Syracuse
The
hawk.
disrespect for Carmelo Anthony is outrageous on this poll. Vince is up 80-20 right now.
Wow. Okay. So here now
Vince Carter is a cool dunker, but come on.
So I guess the moral of this story would be, if you don't want to be outraged by a poll question,
come up with a better one. Yeah, I got it.
Plan a little bit better.
All right.
Speaking of which, I had a moment this morning. I woke up. I'm like, did I really dream that last night? I did.
Oh, I wake up
now.
Like that.
Well, I don't know about you, but during this pandemic, my dreams have been particularly vivid and crazy and whatever. I don't know if it's been that way for you folks at home. But a few years ago, obviously pre-COVID-19, I had a dream that I was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and I was coaching them during training camp.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
It was after
right?
Jim Morrow was let go and Dan Quinn was hired there, and they went with Dan Quinn there, and I dreamt that I was the new head coach there, or a co-head coach with Dan Quinn. And I told him this when he called into the show, and he invited me to go to training camp, and I almost made it. Just for various reasons, I couldn't make it during the summer because of what was going on with NFL Network. I couldn't get there. And then this show, it just was impossible to make it work. But he would have given me a whistle and a visor, and I would not have done the pull-up white socks all the way to my knees, by the way. Wouldn't have done that. But my dream last night involved the Falcons again, is that I watched the Falcons. They were taking on the Saints.
Okay.
And this just shows you I need football in the worst way. They're taking on the Saints, and they're going for 2 for the win. And they flipped it out to Devontae Freeman, who's not even on the team anymore. And he was tackled for a 5-yard loss, and they lose. And I wake up. And I literally thought this to myself. Even in my dreams, they don't use Julio Jones when they should. I swear to you. That's what I thought of. Even in my dreams, Julio Jones didn't get the 50-50 ball for the win. And I thought maybe part of that is because I was just thinking about this 4th and 15 play being a 50-50 ball away from teams maintaining possession in a crucial spot in the NFL, and that's called 50-50 for a reason. The reason why you call a football that's thrown up to somebody who's like 6'5" or can leap a tall building in a single bound at the wide receiver position, it's a 50-50 ball because it's like a coin flip. It's a 50-50 shot that your guy gets it, and plus there's also a shot that the other guy could get it too. So you're flipping a coin as to who gets it. And if the onside kick is a 10% chance, you could do the math about what a 50-50 ball the difference is, because a 50-50 ball could be brought down and all of a sudden that's a better shot than an onside kick. I'm literally thinking this stuff and I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together. I have no idea why the Atlanta Falcons are on my brain, or the fact that it would serve for me to mention it here and troll on the fact that they never use Julio Jones inside the red zone.
You do have a strange obsession with Matt Ryan and his name.
Rich, you got to move on. You got to move on.
Because I try to nickname him the Mattrel.
Well,
because I thought Matty Ice is just not acceptable.
When was the first time you came up with the Mattrel idea?
When we were in our podcast years
I know,
and years
but what
and
I'm
years
saying
ago.
is 8 years ago?
More than that. It's got to be. Well, to me, it's natural light beers are so old. Why are we taking a nickname of the beers that he supposedly used to drink or liked to drink or were in vogue to drink when he was great in Boston College? Why are we still using that for this guy? He's a grown-ass man with children. He's a grown-ass man with a Super Bowl appearance and an MVP award. He does not need to have a nickname based on a light beer. Like it's lame. I don't like it. I think it's old. And I know that what I make is a dad joke calling him the Mattrel based on his first name. And I know I've been pounding that into the sand to the point where
30-year-old movie.
I get it. So you're saying the movie's an older reference than the beer itself?
Exactly.
I mean, he's not calling him Citizen Matt.
70-year-old book. I mean, what are we doing?
Citizen Kane. Brockman hates.
What do you mean? You should call him like Matty Cabernet or something if you're trying to class up the joint.
That makes no sense. I don't know what you're talking about.
Matty Cabernet.
My favorite moment, though, in the history of this is keeping on asking him, so he tells me to move on, right? But then I offer the nickname to, I believe, one of his best friends in the NFL in Stafford.
Rich, you got to move on.
I offered him sloppy seconds. And then, of course, I offered it to Patrick Mahomes for the Pattrel.
Who texted you back.
Laughing, ha, ha, ha. No, I think that's terrible.
Wow. 3 strikes, it's over.
No, it's not.
No more.
That's just
Mattrel.
one. Just there's 3 outs in an inning, as far as I'm concerned.
You can offer it to Matt Schaub. He doesn't have a nickname.
Not yet. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Henry in Wisconsin. Let's take your phone call here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's up, Henry?
Well, thank you for letting me talk, because I got a lot to say.
Okay, I got about 2 minutes, just so you know the time frame.
I'm a 50-year Packer fan.
Okay, sir.
If the Packers lost 3 in a row, we'd be screaming for the GM's head. That's what we'd be doing.
This fall.
We have the same quarterback. We got a quarterback that says he wanted to retire in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, the draft choice, first round, is crazy. And I'll tell you another thing that's really bad. The second round draft choice, running back, he's got him, so he isn't going to have to pay Jones the $17 or $18 million a year that he's worth. And if he does that, Packer fans are going to go crazy. We don't sit back. We're Midwest people, but I'm telling you, we are all Packer fans, and we're not going to put up with this guy. He's going to be gone.
Well, let's just put it this way. We'll see if A.J. Dillon can actually give some more depth to the position that perhaps you didn't have. And we'll see what DeGuara could do, too, because if he can play a use check role, that will be helpful. I just think they need some more wide receiver help, and they didn't get one. And
why didn't they pick up Hopkins?
Well,
third and a fifth?
Yeah, who knows if they were in the running for that. It's entirely possible that they were. We have no idea why he went to Arizona. We have no idea what happened there. I don't know. That's a great question.
Got it done.
But they also don't. They you know, if you're going to pay somebody, it's going to be Devontae Adams. You know, and you're already talking about not wanting to pay Aaron Jones.
Yeah, restructure his contract, Rodgers' contract. You need two. You can't do it with one wide receiver.
How about this then? Let's just say this, and I appreciate the call, Henry, and I love the passion right there. How about this? Let's be more positive. Let's be more glass half full. Let's say Aaron Rodgers has his usual Aaron Rodgers season, and this team that could have been the 1 seed if not for a bounce of the ball here or there is going to be better. The problem is I think the 49ers are too. And you could go from 1 year to the next and say there's no correlation. The 49ers last year is a perfect example. But San Francisco's that much better. They got better in the draft in a manner in which the Packers, I don't believe, did. But we have no idea who these kids are and what they can do. And what the drafting of Jordan Love might light a fire inside Aaron Rodgers, who could basically say, I'm going to turn this kid into Garoppolo just like Brady did. So we'll see. Can't wait to chat with this man, Mike Pereira, talking about the rules changes that were made and not made. That's coming up.
I don't know if you're aware, but you going to Yale was brought up on Game 2 of the NBA Finals.
No way.
Yes, because...
Was it the part where the Cavs were really losing at the end?
No, it's not that. It's not that. No. It's that Jeff Van Gundy, who was on the broadcast, said he went to school with you.
No way.
In a class. Do you...
Sorry, Jeff. Don't remember you. You weren't that memorable. Oops.
You don't remember Jeff Van Gundy
I'm afraid
in class?
I don't. I'm afraid I don't.
Because the reverse is true.
No. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Your phone wasn't lighting up from friends saying,
No,
hey.
I wish I'd seen it. I wish I'd seen him. I would have been able to see his face and maybe, you know. But
well, I mean, I think we could. Can we bring up a picture of Jeff Van Gundy? I don't know. So just stroll down memory lane here. The one in the middle is Jeff Van Gundy. Does that ring a bell to you?
That rings no bell whatsoever. I'm so sorry, Jeff.
No class reunions at all between Jodie Foster and Jeff Van Gundy. Okay. We noticed you mentioned on the air that you were classmates with Jodie Foster at Yale.
Yeah, and then you cheap shot at me afterwards.
No, I don't know. I don't know
like,
about cheap.
You brought her on and just feigned total indifference to my existence in the world. It was a setup. I mean, our freshman year, there was 12 guys on the floor. We all threw in $100 and said, hey, the first guy that gets a date with Jodie Foster, you win the money. I'm coming back from the gym in the early fall, and there's a candy shop right outside the big quad for freshmen. The popcorn is popping. It smells great. And from behind me, someone goes, man, that popcorn smells good. And I turn around, and it's her. And I totally choke, and I say, yeah, and I run to my dorm, right? I was scared. I was intimidated by her.
And now, turn it up. Let's go.
This is the Rich Eisen Show, live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
I've said it before, I've said it again. Baseball cannot throw its hands up and say, we're not playing because we couldn't figure out the money.
The Rich Eisen Show. Earlier on the show, MLB Network reporter Tom Verducci. Coming up, senior NBA writer for The Athletic, David Aldridge. Fox Sports rules analyst Mike Pereira. Plus, from TNT's Snowpiercer, actor Mike O'Malley. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Final hour of the Rich Eisen Show. We're on the air on Friday of this month of May that we can't wait to get over. And then we get to June, and then hopefully in June we will see the return of some more sports. We had David Aldridge on in the last hour talking about how June could be the return of the NBA in terms of training for July. We had Tom Verducci on in the first hour of our program on Sirius XM and also YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show. We had them on earlier, David and Tom talking about the return of baseball, looking far further away. I'll just repeat once again here on this show. If baseball throws its hands up and says we can't do it because of money, then a pox on that house. And I know we shouldn't say words like that, I guess, in a way, in a pandemic, but this is exactly the time when they need to put any distrust and mistrust aside, as it seems they're dealing with that right now. Mike O'Malley from Snowpiercer, and back in the day as the Rick from ESPN. I have a good fun chat with our friend from the city of Boston. He will be joining us in about 18 minutes time to talk about his new show on TNT. But back here on the Rich Eisen Show to talk about the rules changes that were made in the NFL yesterday, and some that were withdrawn and some were tabled, is the lead Fox Rules analyst for their football coverage, and my good old friend from back in the day, being the head of NFL refs when he was, and I was sitting on the NFL Network Total Access set. We always had great chats as we plan to have right now. Mike Pereira. How are you, Mike?
Well, I'd say pretty darn good. You know, you're still working, and I'm catching beautiful trout in Crane Prairie Reservoir, about 35 miles from Bend, Oregon. Just living the dream, Rich. Yeah, living the dream.
And when you texted me yesterday saying that you were going to be fishing when we spoke, and I'm like, hey, you sure got a good. Well, we had a nice. We had a nice shot of what appears to be what you're doing right now. That the reception would be good. It sounds like you're sitting right next to me, so we're all good.
I am, and Leo is just reeling in his fourth fish. I've caught 3 already today, and. It's just great. But let's talk football rules. Can we do that?
We can do that, and I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do exactly that. So can you explain to people what the difference between withdrawing a proposal and what tabling a proposal actually means? Because the Sky Judge got withdrawn, and the 4th and 15 alternative to a one shot from 4th and 15 from a 25 alternative to an onside kick got tabled. What does all that mean, Mike?
Well, if it's withdrawn, then it's got to be brought up again next year. It's basically dead. If it's tabled, then they're going to look at a few more things. And I think, Rich, they brought up some good points, as they try to give teams more of an opportunity to get the ball back if they're behind. I think that, when you look first, the issue with the clock, could you just run out the clock if there was 2 seconds? Then they said, that's not right. They said, okay, let's make it just a dead ball play so no time would run off the clock, and I think that was fair. But I really do think that it's too much of an opportunity to come back, because you conceivably could complete one play that gains, 40 yards and be in a position where you could kick a field goal to win the game. And that doesn't sound right. That brings back the old issue of, the overtime period when you could get the ball in the first drive, run a couple plays, kick a long field goal, win the game. So I really think it needs more thought. I personally think it needs to be junked, period. To me, an onside kick is an onside kick. The opportunities to recover are slim, down in that range of 7%. But, hey, listen, you're behind. So you shouldn't necessarily get a free shot or have it made easier for you to get the ball back. But, they'll take a further look at this. But whoever it was that kind of said, okay, wait a minute, not fair. Not fair. You could win the game on one play when a normal onside kick, the ball's dead as soon as it's recovered by the kicking team, beyond the receiver's restraining line. So I think they used good sense in at least tabling that.
So then what would be the fix? If you can, I know you want to junk it. There are others who kind of like it. And by others, that would be me. I kind of dig the idea of giving one shot of seeing an actual football play as opposed to some sort of a scrum where somebody makes a boner hands team play and then that's the way a game changes. I wouldn't mind seeing an actual football play. So would it be the distance or for me, the issue would be one penalty flag on the defense gives the offense the ball based just on what an automatic first down would come with that play.
So then everybody's favorite defensive hold from a 4th and 15 play that gives you an automatic first down.
That drives me nuts.
It's there's too many unknowns about the thing. I just, to me, I get a little worrisome. What would be a fix? Well, I guess you could look at a fix and say that the play could maximum take you to the 40-yard line, that you couldn't go beyond that. But then that's unrealistic, basically, to shut down a play midstream, because you get beyond the 40-yard line. But, we always try to create excitement, which I think is great. To me, the Sky Judge proposal is more important. But yet, that one, to me is getting a little bit less discussion as we go forward.
So let's get to that one. Mike Pereira here on the Rich Eisen Show. It's funny when we saw Senior Technology Advisor being the title that either somebody who maybe they're the ones who came up with the wardrobe malfunction concept the other, many years ago to call it. I text you. I'm like, what's a Senior Technology Advisor? You want to respond what your text was back to me?
Yeah, it's a Sky Judge, for God's sakes. We want to call it something different than what the AAF called it, and you want to do it a different way. And when I look back at the AAF Sky Judge position, who put it together? Hall of Famer Bill Polian, and I think he did a good job in discussion with those of us involved in the league to say let's limit it. But limit it in the two most important aspects, I guess you would say, in the game: player safety, so that a Sky Judge, not somebody sitting in the replay booth, not the replay official who has enough to do anyways, just an 8th official in the booth with a guy to help him run the video and let him get involved in all player safety issues throughout the course of the game, and then let him get involved in pass interference in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. That's what it was in the AAF, and to me makes perfect sense. Player safety, if the officials on the field call a hit on a defenseless receiver because they said there was helmet contact, but the video shows that it's not, then the Sky Judge could call down and pick it up. Vice versa, if he doesn't call it, but it is clear helmet-to-helmet contact and a foul, he can put it on. Let's focus on what the league feels is the most important thing going forward with the league, which is player safety. So let's utilize the Sky Judge, the 8th official, much like the field judge, the back judge, and the side judge. Let's utilize him for player safety and then let him get involved in pass interference in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. I think it's simple. I think Bill put together a good plan. And I think it could easily work here. And I understand Troy Vincent saying that they don't have the pipeline of people to. Where do you get these people? I think the other simple plan is just make him a part of the crew, an official. He comes out of the college ranks like everybody else. And guess what? The deep officials rotate. So you'll be in that position, the Sky Judge position, every third game. And to me, then that college guy gets experience both on the field and in the booth. And I just think it's the one concept, Rich, in my opinion, that's out there that if you're really trying to change officiating, if you're really trying to make officiating better and you're really trying to get more calls right, forget about the offside or lined up in the neutral zone or delay a game. Player safety, pass interference. Let's go. It'll work. If you want to expand later, try to expand later.
And then how does, for those who might not have seen the AAF, Mike, how does it work because for me, you know, my issue always is a flag that you don't see flying in when you're watching it. And, you know, the crew in the truck doesn't light up the yellow flag rectangle in a manner that you see, or, you know, quickly enough, or you're in the stands, you're at a game and you don't see the flag thrown. Certainly. So how would a fan in the stands know a flag has been thrown? How will we know when a sky judge chimes in? And if it's late, that might really rile up a lot of people. And I understand getting it right is better than not, and that would really rile people up. I'm just concerned about the actual mechanics of it and how that would fail the process.
Let me just say this, that, you know, I think that the game has gone through so many changes and it looks so different and people get used to it. And I think people would get used to this also. And I'd have to say that the call that is either made by the sky judge or picked up by the sky judge will be obvious. It's not something you would hope that would be incorrectly put on or incorrectly reversed. But, you know, I have to tell you, it was interesting. I went back and looked at the championship game, the Broncos at the Chiefs in 1997. That was my last game, and a horrible call that I made in that game, or failed to make. And I watched the whole game for the first time about 3 weeks ago. And, you know, I have to say, after watching a 3-hour football game without instant replay, my God, it was a thing of beauty. I mean, and the interruptions that have come into the game now with instant replay, all of the stops, whether it's initiated by the replay official himself or if it's a call that a coach challenges, there's so many stops, but we've gotten used to it, and we're not going to go back. And I think since we're using technology, and there are already college conferences, they're all using the Power 5 conferences, all using 8 officials. Let's just take the step and see if it works. Look, I think it's got a hell of a lot better chance of working than the pass interference screw up last year, making that reviewable. I think it's worth the shot, Rich. It'll look different, and the flag will be delayed, but the referee will make the announcement after input from the sky judge. There was pass interference on the play, number 23 defense. It's 1st and 10 at the 15-yard line. Move on, go. And, you know, the next day, probably nothing will be mentioned in the newspaper or the talk show host because it'll become a normal part of the game.
A few more minutes left with Mike Pereira as he's fishing right here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'll just give you the floor then on the ultimate question about pass interference no longer being a reviewable play, that there was a 0.0 full Blutarski shot of that thing being made permanent as the rule mandated, that they were going to try it for 1 year and then revisit it for permanence, just like instant replay the year that I started on NFL Network at that owners meeting and at the Breakers in Florida. So why did it fail, Mike? Was it doomed from the start? Walk me through that.
Well, it was 32-zip after 1 week of the season last year, quite frankly, in the opinion of coaches and everybody, that it wasn't going to work. And look, it's simple. I mean, there's absolutely no way that you can make a play, a judgment call like replay, and attach 2 different standards to it. So you want it called one way on the field, but then if it's get challenged or reviewed, then you want to call it a different way in replay. So it's pass interference. It either is or isn't on the field, but when it went to the replay booth and pour out Riveron, then it was like, yeah, it's pass interference, but is it big enough? Is it big enough for us to call in replay? Is it big enough to compare to what happened in New Orleans? It's senseless. It was senseless, and it wasn't fair to pour Al Riveron. And if you want to make it work, like under the sky judge position,
yes,
when you get into the last 5 minutes, it is either interference or it's not. When replay shows that the contact is early, forget about it. It's just a little bit early, but it's early, then it's interference. So use one standard, and then to me it has a chance. But I would also really make it be the end of the game, the last 5 minutes, because in that championship game in New Orleans, there was a big miss in the first quarter. Anybody talking about that? No, because it was the first quarter. It's at the end of the game when it has the impact. So I do think it can work if you use the same standard.
And again, when you said, just to wrap this up, go full circle here, you said at the beginning when something is withdrawn, it's dead. You just meant for the current season. Tabled means that it could actually mean it could actually come into being for the upcoming season. Withdrawn means it just needs to be starting from scratch the next year.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So do you think that there's a shot at a Sky? Cause you sound you sound bullish on the Sky Judge, Mike. Certainly more than the other.
I am. This game is getting harder and harder to officiate, and the officials themselves might not, say, well, we don't want it. Well, I know they say that a lot, but the fact is, this game, the players are getting faster, getting more skill. I mean, it is a very tough game to officiate, and who gets all the criticism? The officials. So give them a tool to get the major calls right and use another official. Don't use instant replay. Don't use the replay official. Let's just hand them an aid, a different aid, so that they can basically their overall performance, including their eighth official, the Sky Judge, really improves.
And I'm mandated to ask you before you hang up, what was the call that you blew or you didn't make from years ago?
Oh, my God, the most simple. It was my one and only playoff game, actually, because I went into the office after my second year. But the simplest illegal contact call in the world, a down and out to McCann. I mean, he actually ran out and up, and he got chucked at 10 yards, and Elway's still in the pocket. And I'm the side judge to make the call, and I froze. I swallowed the olive. I choked. Whatever you want to call it, it was awful, and I'll never forget it. And Mike Shanahan still talks to me about that.
No, he does. Come on now.
But I did.
Come on.
No, he does. He does. And here's the deal. At the end of the game, toward the end of the game in the fourth quarter, on a fourth down pass into the end zone, Tony Gonzalez went up and was hit, and he landed inbounds, out of bounds. It was so tough. Was it a force out? Was it not? What hit first out of bounds? And, of course, it fell on my shoulders, and so I ended up ruling incomplete. So they turned over the ball, and Denver won the game, and I actually was right on that one. And so I remind Mike about the right one, and then he tells me, oh, yeah, that's right. That was the great call. And, of course, we won the Super Bowl. And then I always say, well, then where's my damn ring? If I got that call right, then I should get a Super Bowl ring, for God's sake.
So if Shanahan never,
he's got a long memory.
I was about to say, so when you were the head of NFL refs and he's coming at you about something that was current, did he ever remind you that you screwed that one up, just like what he was accusing you of screwing up this time?
Yeah, right before he hung up. Yes, he would remind me of that.
Take care of yourself, Mike. Go catch your fish. Go. You got to hope they keep biting. That's Mike Pereira. That's Mike Pereira. I remember a couple years where he was when we first started NFL Network, and he would do his official review segment with us. Yeah. I remember we would do it on Mondays. Remember we'd do it like fresh right out of the box. And then a couple years later, he started doing it like on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it was new. It was totally new. Putting the head of NFL refs on NFL Network, that was one of our earliest great, you want to talk about access, stuff that you couldn't see anywhere else? The biggest controversial calls, we would talk about it with Mike Pereira. And we started on Monday, and then we go on Wednesdays because I heard it was an almost immediate non-starter for all the coaches who wanted to call and get a piece of Mike Pereira to be told he's recording with NFL Network right now. That was not an acceptable answer to some of the people who wanted a pound of Pereira's flesh. So he would spend the first 2 days of the week administering the back and forth that coaches demanded of him. Then once that was all put to bed, coaches now were going to move and turn the page on to the next week. Mike would then show up on Wednesdays. And then 1 year after the Super Bowl in Seattle, with Seattle and Pittsburgh, he went on vacation, and we did it the following week. And I remember Matthew Hasselbeck seeing me at the Pro Bowl after they lost to Pittsburgh. Where was Pereira? He called us the NFL's network because we wouldn't talk about it because it was the Super Bowl. I'm like, he's on vacation, man. We did it the following week later. Then I asked him all about that stuff. Mike O'Malley of TNT Snowpiercer. My buddy Mike O'Malley from back in the day, the Rick, will join us. So that is not a real photograph of Mike Pereira fishing.
Yeah,
correct?
I asked
that's a smidge.
He asked me immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a Photoshop.
It does look very real.
Yeah, I thought so too.
He's holding up. I don't know.
It's a
my
brook
fishing.
trout. I'm kidding.
What is it?
I made that up.
Looks like a rainbow.
It's a rainbow trout.
Looks like rainbow. I thought it looks pretty real.
Because that looks. Is that looks like reservoir fishing,
good.
right? I don't know.
I mean, that looks like Lake
really
Mead
good
right there.
Photoshop situation.
The only fish. Well done, Smitch. You got me. I've gone. I did go fishing once. I think in Lake Shasta up in Northern California because that's what when I did my local TV up in Redding, California, I went fishing. I panned for gold. I've actually done that in life. You don't seem impressed by that, Chris. Have you ever panned for gold? Are you not paying attention to what I'm saying?
I have panned for gold, and I've caught many fish. So.
You have panned for gold?
Yeah.
Where?
In Skagway, Alaska, the birthplace of the Alaskan gold rush.
Boy, and here I am in Northern California thinking I was in the gold.
Come on, boom.
It's like you just called Mark Kelly on me.
Yeah, when we lived in Alaska the second time, we took a field trip in like the 4th or 5th grade up to Skagway.
And you panned
we
for
literally
gold.
panned
Did
for
you
gold.
get any?
I'm pretty sure it's all been panned out by then.
I got a few flakes.
Well, yeah,
out of the ground.
flakes. I mean,
I
you're
did.
not looking for any nuggets. Right?
Oh, I'm not saying like it was deadwood.
No, it was cool. We had these like cool little pans, and they taught us how to put the water in and kind of sift it around.
Oh,
yeah.
I can say I never have panned for gold.
I've panned for gold. I've done.
I think how old I must have been
I went fly fishing,
9 or 10.
and in Lake Shasta, I was on a houseboat in Lake Shasta. That's about it. That's my outdoors career.
Yeah, we lived in Alaska. We had a boat. We would go fishing like every weekend, and like my dad and his friend would go on these like weekend excursions.
Okay,
it was fun.
So the phone number is 844-204-RICH. Here's how we're going to roll. When the NBCSN audience rejoins us, Mike O'Malley will be on the phone line, and I haven't spoken to him in quite some time. And then we'll take your calls and head into the weekend at 844-204-RICH. Set up the rest of the week as well here on the show. Do you want to update the poll question real quick over there, Chris?
Not really. I mean, just the disrespect for Carmelo Anthony that's going on right now. So whose career would you rather have, Vince Carter, Carmelo Anthony, who's celebrating his 36th birthday today? 81% Vince
What happened?
Carter.
What happened?
I guess like in-game dunking is cool, I suppose, rather than being, the greatest U.S. Olympic basketball player ever, one of the most clutch shooters of all time, 10-time All-Star, scoring champ.
Sorry it's turned out that way for you.
I get it.
All
I mean,
right.
he's a New York Knick. He's your guy.
Sure. He's my guy. Please. Please. We're back with Mike O'Malley in a second here. Welcome back to this Friday program on the Rich Eisen Show, live on NBCSN, Sirius XM Channel 211, our YouTube page. Please subscribe to it if you already haven't. YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show is how we're streamed all the time. The stars of Snowpiercers, Daveed Diggs, who was on last week, Jennifer Connelly, and this man, my buddy from back in the day, got to meet him years ago at ESPYs, I believe, and on ESPN. When he was the Rick. Now he is a writer, producer, showrunner, and actor extraordinaire. Mike O'Malley back here on the show. How are you, Michael?
Rich Eisen, great talking to you today, man. So happy to be with you. I'm doing all right. I'm surviving. You know, I'm home with 3 teenagers in lockdown mode still. So we got a 17-year-old, we got a 15-year-old, we got a 13-year-old. So it's insane. I miss the youth sports. I'd do anything to sit in the stands next to some dad I wanted to punch in the throat without knowing what I'm talking about. But I never thought I'd miss that either. I never thought I'd miss it. I miss it now.
You never thought you'd miss the parents who make life miserable for youth sports, but that is the way that the world is turning right now, Mike. Well, how did you get in? How did you first get involved? And again, you're big on youth sports here and baseball for sure, about teaching kids the game and the love of the game and all that. How did you get involved in that years ago?
I'm a schmuck, Rich. I'm a schmuck who, believes that dads had to be around their sons to hang out and have a good relationship with them. And I, like any schmuck dad, I got suckered into it by some guy who made it seem like it was a great thing. And then next thing I know, I was doing it. And like I said, anytime you can leave a youth gym or a youth sports field and not have gotten into a fist fight with somebody, I think is a great day. That's the victory for me. It's not about teaching kids the love of the game. It's just realizing how much we're really on. Humanity's on the brink of war at any time because of that rage that's within us to have to sit next to people who don't know what they're talking about.
Well, you know what, Mike? One year I've mentioned it here on the show. I don't know if you were. That was why we had you call in once, but I think it was with it wasn't this particular, but the youth league that that you are associated with here. My son plays in, and. He had a manager who would set the lineup based on when the kid arrived. So if you brought your kid late, he would hit like 10th in the order and then have to wait maybe like 3 innings to hit. So for the final game, I'm like, which by the way wasn't very fair to parents with like 2 other kids and a Sunday. It's just so anyway. My wife and I, we were determined we were going to get our son to the game on time for the last game of the year, and sure enough, we got him in the top of the order, and he gets up there, and another fellow 8-year-old hits him in the chops. And he goes right down, and so I go out on the field to make sure he's okay because he never says a word whenever he gets hurt. And this time he was beginning to cry. And the umpire told him to take his base, Mike. The umpire told him to take his base, and I started telling the umpire, I'm like, no, we've been waiting a week for my son to hit. No, we got my son here on time. You have no idea what the hell was happening in my house today. And I was suddenly, with everybody watching, I was that dad going to an umpire who's giving his time for this event. I was that guy.
Terrible, Rich.
I was that guy for a split moment, Mike.
Yeah, you're allowed to be that guy because you care. This is the thing, Rich. When your kid, here's the thing. The thing about sports that I've figured out is that when your kid strikes out or they make an error or, the opposite, they get a hit, it's all primal. When, you think to yourself, oh, my God, my name is never going to go on. This person's never going to meet a girl, fall in love, have children because he can't succeed. This is primal. It's just, we've taken it to things like sports. But anyways, Rich, I'm sorry that happened to you.
No, it's okay, Mike. We got through it.
As the former president of that league,
yes.
I hope that league mostly brought you joy,
very much
instead of pain.
And we miss it right now. We miss it. I mean, so many young men and women in youth sports, and obviously also high school spring sports being canceled right now. It has been very, very difficult. That people waiting for their senior years for their spring sports before they graduate. It's been brutal, and
I think that one of the things that the kids don't realize, you realize it as grown-ups. It's like whenever you're driving your kid to a practice and, they're kind of like, I'm tired. I don't want to go. I got so much homework. And then if you were to cut to the drive home when they're in a great mood, it's because, that energy that they have from, exercising and being with their friends and joking around and laughing. It's just like when you go to do a workout, you never want to go do it. You always feel better after you did it. And I think that they're not able to make that connection necessarily. That's what the difficult thing is. I mean, if all of us come out of this and every single kid is depressed just from being locked in inside, not being able to, exercise and be with their friends, I mean, that's a win,
Yep. Mike O'Malley here on the Rich Eisen Show. Are you going to root for Brady in Tampa? Mike, where are you on that subject?
Of course I am. Yes, of course I'm going to root for him in Tampa. He's that Tom Brady has brought all New England fans and most football fans tremendous joy in terms of how he performed. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like him because he won a lot of Super Bowls and beat their teams. But I mean, as a guy who rooted for the Patriots all growing up, and then got to be right around 2000, they started to really take off. This guy is it's brought so much joy to our family, and so yeah, I root for him. I listen now. I root for him as an old guy. As a 53-year-old guy. Happy that a guy his age is playing.
Yeah, it's funny. Most Patriots fans that I know, and that includes the my friend Chris Brockman, who's across the way here, who you met when you've been around here. Is that Brady going to Tampa was just like, okay, you were kind of expecting Tom to not return, even those who might have held out for thinking he would never leave. But Gronk going too, that's the issue. That's the one thing, like that Gronk comes back and he's going to join Tom there, and that the reunion happens there, not in New England. That's kind of the tough swallow to take right there.
It is, but I think that I think that Rob Gronkowski, I really think that he was not thinking about going back and playing. I really do think that he was retiring. I would love to know. I'd love to talk to him and find out what the inside story was. I mean, a lot of people say, I think one of the reasons he's going back to Tampa, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they don't think that he's going to have to do as much blocking as he was going to have to do in the Patriots offense. Is that a real reason, you think, Rich?
I don't think so. I just think that he wasn't feeling physically up to it, or wasn't physically mentally up for being going through the rigors of a season where everybody's aiming for his knees and below, or his waist to his knees, and go through another Belichick crucible. I don't think he was up for that. Now that he's feeling a little bit better, he misses the game. He saw it, and TB12 calls him up and says, how about you come with me down to Florida? Like everybody who retires, you spend some time in Florida. How about you with me and with Arians, and off we go. I think the answer was 1,000% yes. That's what I think happened.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
We were interested. I'm writing. So in addition to acting, and I am doing this new show, Snowpiercer, which is awesome. It's on Sunday nights on TNT at 9 o'clock. But I'm also writing and running a show. I had written on Shameless for a bunch of years, and then got more into the writing. And now I'm running a show that's going to be done in Atlanta. That James Harrison. We just cast 2 former NFL players in this show.
Okay.
Miles Burris and James Harrison, and they're both playing wrestlers in this show. It's about an independent wrestling promotion in in Georgia.
Yes.
And the show is starring Stephen Amell and Alexander Ludwig, and we're just stoked.
Well, here's the thing with James Harrison is when you pay him, you need to pay him in cash in an envelope. Will you do that for everybody?
I will do that. I listen.
Because that's apparently what he's used to on occasion.
If you follow James's Instagram, you know that he works out quite a bit. So
yes, sir.
I'm not going to cross James Harrison.
No, understood. Okay. Understood. So again, the manner on occasion, apparently there's an envelope handed to him. We're assuming there's cash in it. Could be a note.
He's got to report it to the IRS. That's all I care about. I want the roads to be paved, and I want the military to be able to be funded. That's all.
There you go, Mike O'Malley. And before we do turn to Snowpiercer a little bit here, let's linger a little bit more on your writing, creating, show running abilities, and what you did with LeBron James and Maverick Carter for Stars, Survivor's Remorse. Did you actually sit down and work with LeBron, or vice versa, at any point in time during this process?
Oh yeah. I mean, you say what I did for them. It's more what they did for me. When Maverick Carter, who I met through Tom Werner. Tom is, of course, the owner of the Red Sox,
yes,
and part owner of Liverpool Soccer, but made his name producing television shows. And I had written some stuff with him that didn't go, and he introduced me to LeBron and Maverick, and he said, "Would you be interested in writing and developing this idea, this premise that they have on what it's like to grow up in a place where you struggle, you come from nothing, and then you have success, and yet all the people that you loved and you cared about and you grew up and are still stuck in that place." So that's where the notion of survivor's remorse came from, which is, Maverick Carter is LeBron's business partner. He's the one who introduced me to that phrase. I had heard of, survivor's guilt and something that happens when, there's a shipwreck or a plane crash. Mm-hmm. You live, someone else dies, you don't know why. But attaching this idea and this concept to growing up in the projects and getting out, and then feeling this obligation to continuously throw life preservers to other people who are still there. What's different about that scenario is that those folks, they're still there. They haven't perished. You can help them with a car payment, with a health insurance payment, with a loan, and it never stops. And especially if you're big-hearted like LeBron and Maverick are. And so they came to me. I wrote this show. I flew down to Miami, and I actually did a table read of the show with LeBron and Maverick and Randy, their buddy, and a couple of their, I think his wife Savannah read a role. It was a real trip to be down there reading the script with those guys. But what I loved about working with LeBron and Maverick is that they said if it's happening in the world, it could happen on this show. And so on Survivor's Remorse, we did 4 seasons of the show on Starz, and LeBron was in an episode. Maverick was really involved as an executive producer. LeBron visited the set a couple times. It was great, but they were very, very supportive of everyone, and to have that kind of support, that wind at your back, was a great thing for me as an emerging writer.
Hey, look, man, and obviously Maverick Carter and LeBron James are huge, obviously in their own right, in their own worlds, and then to enter with you and yours, and it's interesting. You got introduced them by Tom Werner, owner of the Red Sox. I don't know if I'm breaking any news to you. The reason why Mookie Betts is a Dodger is I think Mookie wanted all of Tom's Roseanne money. Asked for every penny of his Roseanne money, and all of John Henry's investment dollars. It's odd. And suddenly Mookie's now a Dodger. I think that's what he wanted.
And they should have gave it to him. Like, what are we doing?
But hold on, he hasn't played a game as a Dodger yet.
Okay.
He may not ever play a game as a Dodger.
I don't know, Mike. I think that ship sailed, brother. I think that ship has sailed, and Mookie's not coming back. He's not walking through that door. Mookie Betts is not walking through that door, to use a Patino phrase.
If there's no season this year, though, he could still go back.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It ain't
exactly.
happening. Oh, please. You guys.
Do you think baseball's getting played this season?
I do. I think it, we've been talking about it quite a bit on this show, Mike. I just think that baseball at some point is going to look at each other and say, what the hell are we doing here? I know you don't trust me. I know I don't trust you. I know we have a level of mistrust and distrust that's difficult to bridge, but we're going to figure this thing out, because the last thing we're going to do with everybody trying to come back to play in a pandemic is throw our hands up over economics. That, I think, is just going to rule the day at some point.
Yeah, and I think that, man, would I just love to have a game every day. I mean, it's just so wonderful, baseball. Just every day there's a new story, and, God, I miss it so much.
In the meantime, congrats on the success of Snowpiercer, already picked up for a second season. It's good to see you back on the screen, too, brother, in front of the camera.
Thank you, man. It's been awesome, and, anytime anyone offers you a part where you get to stand next to Jennifer Connelly, two things happen. Okay, two things happen. The first thing, if you're a red-blooded American male, which I am, you say, yes, I'll be there.
Yes.
I've wanted to be standing there for 30 years next to Jennifer Connelly. The sad thing, what happens when you're there, and the photos come back and the footage comes back, you can't believe how hideous you look next to her. I mean, literally. I mean, it's like being Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Okay, there's like a promotional photo where I'm standing next to her, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just like every day. You do what you can. You work with what you can, Rich. I know you look in the mirror. You say, you know what? I may not be the most handsome creature, but I'm looking okay. Then you go to work and you wish somebody had said to you, you look terrible. You're terrible. You look ill. What is it? I understand how, people go get plastic surgery because you're standing next to Jennifer Connelly, who's like a model. I mean, she's stunning looking.
Yes.
She's a stunningly nice person, and she's massively talented. And I'm like Shrek next to her. It's terrible.
Well, I hate to tell you, we're looking at you right now. Daveed Diggs is also a handsome man and supremely talented as well. And but you've got a nice suit on. You've got a nice suit. Your beard is trimmed. Mike.
Here's the thing. I'm a great stage in my life, Rich. This is why. Okay, there's so many. The great villains now get to be there's great senators and congressmen and people that I can play for the rest of my life that are just a little bit overweight, a little bit I can't even say thin in the hair. I mean, no hair. It's just we get to be those people that add a different aspect to other people's attractiveness. You stand next to me, you're stunningly attractive, and that's what I bring to projects now.
Hey, Mike, let's just wrap it up with the old Caddyshack line. You're a tremendous slouch. Don't worry. You're a tremendous slouch. You're tremendous.
Oh, God. Well, Rich, I look forward to getting your kid at the top of the lineup back in the league over there at the mighty Wilshire Warriors.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And,
I agree.
I was told this morning that I've taken over a hosting job that you did about 18 years ago. You hosted Hot Stove Cool Music for Peter Gammons back in Boston.
Yeah, a long time ago. Oh, my.
A long time ago.
God, that's right.
And
by the way, Peter Gammons can shred, by the way.
He can. He's a great guitarist.
Did you guys know that Gammons can shred the guitar?
I knew that he was in a band. I didn't realize
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Boy, that's when you were the Rick when I used to when I did
when
that.
I was the Rick. That's when I came up. And also, they passed the baton to me because you're smart and you're out here in Los Angeles. But we actually have an event in January 18th at him and Theo Epstein for their foundation to be named later. They're going to do a live event online. So we were talking about you this morning.
Fantastic.
So I know this is compelling radio.
Mike,
talk about this.
It's all good, brother. You're a blast to have around. And again, congrats on Snowpiercer. Again, 9 Eastern on TNT on Sunday nights. Thanks for the time,
Thanks,
man. You be
all
well.
right, we'll be in touch.
Right back at you. That's Mike O'Malley. By the way, he truly is one of the more sought-after guys. If you want to launch a show, you want to write it, you want it produced in a certain way, that's the guy. There's a lot of people who would knock on his door in this town, man. And now
the Rick.
He's given James Harrison a paycheck.
That is amazing.
That was written. That was just teed right up. Back with your phone calls to wrap up the week and this Friday. Oh, man. Yeah, Mookie wanted all of Tom Werner's Roseanne money. By the way, not only the new, but the original. All of his money.
Both the new and the original.
And they should have gave it to him.
Rugby's back in Australia, Rich.
By the way, is that right?
Yep.
Let's roll, man. Oh.
We need.
So how about that? David Aldridge called it a virtual certainty that they're going to give it a try with the NBA.
I love it.
Okay.
So end of July, maybe we'll
there's
have
not
NBA?
There's not a single person in the NFL that I talk to is like, I don't know.
No, they're playing.
We'll talk to you soon. We're not,
Even yesterday, both Mike Zimmer and Andy Reid were like, we're
Well, I mean, these are
progressing,
football coaches. I mean,
but
they're playing.
Still.
There's not a
fans,
single one that's saying right now, it's all with the undercurrent of we don't know what the virus is going to look like.
Yeah, it's 3 months. I mean, it's.
But we're going to give it a try.
Baseball's got to work.
Thank God they signed that, and I know I shouldn't say this like this because I know there's a ton of NFL players who I respect immensely who thought they should not have signed it.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if a lot of them will be like, I'm glad we signed that now that the pandemic and COVID-19's hit and the finances are all over the place right now, that at least they signed something with certainty. So we're all looking for certainty in the most uncertain times of our lifetimes. We may never live another year more uncertain right now than what's happening at 2:44 Eastern Time, 25 seconds, right?
I was thinking about this morning. Like, when my son is old enough to eventually ask me about what was going on when I was born,
right?
What do I tell him first?
That in those times, you did your best to represent him and your family name by working and going on the Rich Eisen show and saying you didn't want to go to space because you'd be bored. Literally, that's what you should tell your child.
I mean, what event do I start with?
Oh,
the SpaceX launch that you were totally incurious about. All right, we're back in a second.
People agree with me.
It was a blast watching it. What was it like playing it, Peyton?
What a great seat Tom and I had watching Phil and Tiger do their thing. And Tiger wanted to bring his 3 U.S. Open trophies with him in the car in the parking lot and have me carry one, have him carry one, and then go ask if Phil wanted to carry the other. So that got scratched. So I had a couple more for Tom, as did Tiger, but when the golf didn't start out so well, we kind of called an Omaha audible on those. And just didn't feel that was appropriate.
I heard you talking about Tyson.
Yes.
I was at the Holyfield fight.
The one where he bit him.
Close.
And what's your recollection
of that? That was like the scariest night in my sports activities ever in my life. I didn't believe what I was seeing. They stopped that fight a couple of times before because I think he was biting before.
Yes.
But when he spit that out, I was close enough to say, what is he eating? That he just, look, he spit out his gum. Wait, that's not gum. That's flesh.
That's lobe. That's lobe. I can't believe you wouldn't want to go into space.
What do you do when you get there?
I want to go to the moon.
What do you mean? What do you do when you get there? Out of every possible reason to not go into space, fear of boredom is at the top of your list.
After 30 seconds of being like, wow, that's the Earth, that's cool. Then what?
Then what?
Then what?
Yeah.
Then what? Look out the window, Chris. Is this astronaut Mark Kelly on the Rich Eisen show?
It is, Rich.
Yes!
Happy to be here. On my 4 missions into space between 2001 and 2011, we built a 1 million-pound space station in orbit. There is not 1 second of boredom. Chris, you would love every minute of it.
I'll be honest with you, we on our show really got a big kick out of your setup at home. There's a Stairmaster there, right?
Yeah, it's right behind me. I'm hiding it from you.
Okay.
I'm also hiding it from myself. No, I'm not. Believe it or not, I get on that thing and it talks to me. We have a relationship.
What does it say to you? What does it say to you?
Well, it's like the last 15 minutes, it's not good. It really talks dirty to me and it's terrible. So I can't say that on radio here.
Another fun week here. Another fun week here on NBCSN and
well done.
Sirius and YouTube. I got to be honest with you. Again, we're 5.5 years into the history of this show, Chris, and I think a new top 5 moment is flexing with Captain Mark Kelly.
Yeah.
To refute your notion that going to space is not, after 30 seconds, something you'd really want to endeavor because what else? What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to fill your time?
Different. I mean,
how are you going to fill your
he's
time
an astronaut.
in space?
They built a space station.
Getting him to refute that really was an excellent flex on my part. And then him flexing when he comes on, I was like, well, in my 4 missions.
And 100 space walks.
Oh, my God.
I mean,
we took thousands of pounds of equipment and built a space station. Okay, Mark, we got it.
Oh, man, that was really enjoyable.
Pretty funny. I rewatched those yesterday.
The funniest thing he said, though, was he reiterated that the world was round. Did you notice?
Yes.
Remember how he threw that in there when he said around the world?
Well, I think he was talking to Kyrie Irving right there,
I think he was talking
to Kyrie
to
Irving of the world's the flat earthers, TJ. Our social media grandmaster, TJ Jefferson, chiming in right there. Very good. The disembodied voice of our social media grand maester, and great job as always, TJ, on our Instagram feed. Check it out at Rich Eisen Show. He is curating all weekend long. It's amazing, especially when there's sports on the weekend too. Let's go to Dale in Orlando, Florida, where we could actually have an NBA season. What's up, Dale?
Hey, Rich. 2 quick things, if I could.
Yes.
On ESPN, they're showing like a history of This Is ESPN that I watched the other day, and your commercials obviously are in there.
Yes.
I question. You're coming out of a stall, you hear you flush, and then you come out with your hands in your pocket.
Oh no! You're touching on a sore subject, Dale.
Dale, are you doing this to mess with me? Have you seen me talk about this before? Or are you really wondering about it?
No, I have not. And I'm starting to think I've never seen anybody do that.
All right, Rich, tell the story quick.
Well, what's your other thing you got in your mind, Dale?
Okay, it's about the Roy Halladay special tonight.
Yes, I'll be watching that. Yep.
You allowed me to call in the day after the plane crash, and I got very upset. Big fan of his. I was at the perfect game 10 years ago in Miami. And it's just this day is a little tough thinking about how happy I was then and how it ended for him.
Well, if it's tough, then enjoy the story I'm about to tell then, Dale, because you brought it up, and I will be watching that the Doc Holliday stuff tonight.
For sure.
All right. Here's the story. Come on. Here's the story that...
Make sure you follow up with the Yankee Stadium.
No, I will. I'll tell the whole thing.
All right, good.
So the SportsCenter commercial you're referring to, Dale, is Stuart Scott is washing his hands, and he's just as if he's just finished going to the bathroom, or he's using the bathroom to wash his hands. You hear a flush. I come walking out of a stall. You hear another flush. Out a jockey walks. You hear a third flush, and a horse walks behind Stewart, who kind of makes this look like that's strange, and just goes back to his business of washing his hands. So I said to the director, look, I don't feel like I have an ego, but one thing I must do in this commercial is I must, if I am coming out of this stall, I must also wash my hands before leaving the frame. Have to do it. And the director goes, I understand what your problem is, but for the commercial to work and the amount of time that we have, we cannot have you walk up, wash your hands, and leave. You just have to leave the frame. I am like, you have no idea what sort of crap I'm going to hear if I come across as somebody without that sense of hygiene. No pun intended about the crap that I'm going to hear. All right? So then the sound guy, Mike, one of your colleagues, walks up to me and he goes, look, the most important thing is really, we both know, is that your hands are clean before you go into the can. And I say to him, what the hell does that mean? And what does it do to fix this issue? Nobody's going to look at this and go, well, you know. So I decided to put my hands in my pockets when I left the stall so people will understand in some form of protest that I've been forced to do this. Dale, cut to commercial airs. Mere weeks later, I'm on the field at Yankee Stadium prior to a World Series game for ESPN Radio, and somebody screams out, hey, Eisen, why don't you wash your hands when you go to the can? That happened. And here you call in the late May of 2020, out of all the commercials, out of all the gin joints that I did for ESPN, you walk into that one.
Well, I thought it was odder seeing you do that than a horse walking by.
Thank you, Dale. That's what we call a walk-off. There we go.
Enjoy the weekend, Dale. Phenomenal.
This is SportsCenter commercials.
Oh, we were watching a bunch this morning.
I recorded them. I recorded that. I haven't had time to watch it.
Great.
But I guess a friend of mine said that did they have the Kerry Strug commercial? Did they run that one? Because that's the first one I ever did. I was there for about 2 weeks, and I remember when I got there, they were shooting the Don't Walk commercial. The Don't Walk commercial. If you remember the Hands Across America sort of mocking commercial that they did where they sang Don't Walk. You remember that?
I don't.
No. I have to look at that one now.
Where,
Oh, the song.
The
got
song.
It. Yeah, I got it. Yep.
That Kilborn was all over that. And I thought, they'll never put me in a commercial. But they did, which was Kerry Strug, fresh off of the 96 Olympics, being carried off by Bella Caroli. And she got Her mom was on the set, and I don't think she was very happy that her daughter was being passed off from one guy to the next.
I remember that.
So I forget. I either received Kerry Strug from Keith and handed her off to Larry Beal or Carl Ravitch. The ultimate gag was then she was eventually passed off to the Michigan State Spartan mascot, and that was the end of the commercial.
This Don't Walk commercial is really funny.
It's great. It's great.
Little Penny's in this.
Oh, my God.
Oklahoma
It's
State
very,
mascot.
very funny.
The Marlin. A lot of Gary Miller.
But the one I get all the time is the Lou Duva commercial where, it's a commercial break. And he comes in, he's like my corner man. And I'm like, cut me, Lou. And, he's like, give him some tea. And I extend my pinky, which was an ad lib on my part. And I just say, the teleprompter's moving too fast. I can't keep up, which was the script. And they said to Lou Duva, just work him over like you're working somebody in the corner. And he would slap me. He literally did slap me. But the beeps that you hear in the commercial are because he was doing his thing. He could not deliver enough safe for work language in a row for them to use even 5 seconds without having to bleep him out.
That's so funny. Wow.
Good memory lane stroll to end this week.
Stuff, man.
We thank everybody for joining today. Tom Verducci, David Aldridge, Mike Pereira, and Mike O'Malley, and you especially. I know the world feels like it's spinning off its axis. If there's any way that we could help with that by putting it back on the axis, then we'll be here for you. We'll be here for you Monday. I hope that the weekend is happy, healthy, and safe, and that justice and peace are found. 844-204-RICH. We'll chat with you on Monday.